Chapter 169. The news of the Emperor's Star Academy withdrawing from the dark forest and mountain's death quickly circulated around the royal capital, causing a huge commotion. Although there were many people in the Emperor's Star Academy who knew of Mountain, he wasn't that famous in the entire royal capital. The reason why he was able to attract so much attention was naturally because of the delicate relationship between the Emperor's Star Academy and the royal clan. For him to be killed in the dark forest at this time, it was extremely strange. All sorts of rumors and slanders circulated throughout the royal capital, with the ultimate target being the conflict between the Emperor's Star Academy and the royal clan. In the Chu country, the status of the Emperor's Star Academy had always been transcendent. With regards to this gigantic existence, the royal clan of Chu had always tolerated it, only supporting the Royal Academy and the godly General Martial Palace to weaken the power of the Emperor's Star Academy. Such a balance had persisted for too many years, but now that the Royal Academy had merged with the godly General Martial Palace, could it be that the royal clan was finally no longer willing to tolerate the existence of the Emperor's Star Academy? The people of Chu naturally didn't know why the royal clan would choose to act at such a difficult time. After all, the Chu country was currently engulfed in the flames of war. The rebel armies were attacking the royal capital step by step, advancing steadily, advancing towards the direction of the royal capital. This was a large-scale encirclement, starting from the borders of the Chu country. This was undoubtedly the most difficult time for the royal clan. It was said that the imperial family's army had already begun to retreat, preparing to give up half of the country to the rebel army. As the saying went, united they were strong, scattered they were weak. The imperial family could only give up some things in order to gather their strength. At this moment, in the royal palace of Chu, in a resplendent hall filled with gold and jade, several silhouettes could be seen on both sides of the hall. However, the person seated in the main seat wasn't Chu Tianjiao, but Xiao Lan. Xiao Lan reclined on the chair, her fingers tapping on the armrest as if there was a special rhythm. "How are your preparations?" Xiao Lan asked calmly. "There's no problem with the Chu clan, but when will the experts from the 9 mystical palace arrive?" Chu Tianjiao replied. "Probably in the next 2 days." Xiao Lan's gaze shifted onto Chu Tianjiao, as he asked, "How about the snow cloud country?" "Almost there, within 3 days, Xiao Lu replied. Xiao Lan lightly nodded his head, closing his eyes to meditate. After a moment of silence, he spoke again, "Xiao Lu's, it's been hard on you this time around. If this matter is successful, I will report this to the 9 mystical palace. Maybe, your faction will be able to return." "Thank you, elder brother." Xiao Lu had a smile on his face. Not many people knew that the royal clan of Snow Cloud Country was actually a branch of the Shao clan of the 9 mystical palace. "It's about time. During these few days, I will send people to secretly provoke the Emperor's Star Academy, forcing them to take the initiative to act." Chu Tianjiao laughed. As to why he chose this timing to act against the Emperor's Star Academy, it was naturally because this was an extremely rare opportunity. The 9 mystical palace, which had never interfered with the affairs of the countries under them, wanted to make a move against the Emperor's Star Academy. Chu Tianjiao didn't know the exact reason. Xiao Lan was a descendant of the Shao clan, one of the 3 major powers of the 9 mystical palace. Since he was here, Chu Tianjiao naturally wouldn't ask. He knew that this wasn't something he should be asking. Although Xiao Lan's eyes were closed, there were many worries in his heart. It wouldn't be easy to take down the Emperor's Star Academy. Luo Tianya had once wanted to do this, but sadly, he didn't succeed. Behind the Emperor's Star Academy, there were shadows of the Azure Emperor Palace. When Heavenly Dipper sovereigns acted, the shadows of the Azure Emperor Palace would appear. In the past, Xiao Lan had never paid attention to this. But now, he could faintly sense that this connection was related to the Azure Emperor, and the Emperor's Star Academy's secret. The Emperor's Star Academy had 3 wondrous grounds, the Heavenly Star Pavilion, the Astral River Hall, and the Dream Sky Forest. Could the secret be hidden in these 3 wondrous grounds, or somewhere else? Qin Wentian could already step into the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. He had thought of finding someone to interrogate Qin Wentian, but when he thought of Gong Hong, he decided against it. This wasn't a suitable time to provoke a Heavenly Dipper sovereign. If they wanted to make a move against Qin Wentian, it would be best for him not to be implicated. After all, he wasn't clear about the relationship between Gong Hong and Qin Wentian. Although the Shao clan didn't care about a mere Gong Hong, if a Heavenly Dipper sovereign went crazy, it would be extremely tragic for a junior like him. As for Taishan's death, they didn't care at all. Although they didn't care, the Emperor's Star Academy did. Today, the Emperor's Star Academy intentionally engraved a stone tablet for Taishan and Zijun. Although Zijun had yet to officially enter the Emperor's Star Academy, the introduction on the stone tablet stated that Zijun was also a genius student of the Emperor's Star Academy. This was a first for the Emperor's Star Academy. The Emperor's Star Monument bore witness to the history and glory of the Emperor's Star Academy. Never before had the death of a student been engraved here. But this time around, the Emperor's Star Academy made an exception. A cold wind blew past, exuding a sense of desolation. Many silhouettes stood in front of the Emperor's Star Monument, including the elders of the Emperor's Star Academy. All of them had solemn expressions on their faces as they stared ahead. Engraving the stone tablet was Ren Qianqing's idea. He wanted the Emperor's Star Academy to record this historical event. This wasn't a simple assassination, it was a declaration of war. Many years later, if the Emperor's Star Academy still existed, this period of history would be mentioned by the later generations. But if the Emperor's Star Academy disappeared, then all of this would no longer matter. Hence, when Ren Qianqing proposed the idea of engraving the stone tablet, the opinions of the elders of the Emperor's Star Academy were astonishingly unanimous. All of them had agreed. Behind these elders, there were many students of the Emperor's Star Academy. Initially, they were bewildered as to why the Emperor's Star Academy would engrave the stone tablet because of Tai Shan and a youth who had yet to officially enter the academy. But as the rumors spread, they understood. This was a historical event for the Emperor's Star Academy. Next, there was a very high possibility that something major would happen. The third prince of Chu, Chu Tianjiao, pays his respects. From afar, a booming voice resounded throughout the Emperor's Star Academy, causing the crowd to burst into a clamor. Very quickly, they saw the silhouettes of Chu Tianjiao and his group. The arrival of these people was something that the Emperor's Star Academy hadn't anticipated. The crowd automatically opened up a path for them, allowing Chu Tianjiao and his group to arrive before the Emperor's Star Monument. The elders of the Emperor's Star Academy slowly turned their gazes onto Chu Tianjiao and his group. Yi Wuk, Wu Chong, Wang Teng, and the rest were all present. Upon seeing their arrival, a cold killing intent gushed forth from Qin Wentian. Beside him, a dainty hand lightly touched his palm. Feeling the warmth of her hand, Qin Wentian froze. Turning his head, he saw Mo Qingqing smiling sweetly at him, and the killing intent radiating from him also retracted. Chu Tianjiao continued walking forward, facing the Emperor's Star Monument. In front of them, there was a silhouette quietly standing there, with his back facing them. That person was none other than Mustang. Chu Tianjiao and his group bowed to the Emperor's Star Monument. He, too, didn't expect that the Emperor's Star Academy would engrave a monument for Mountain and Zijuan. The actions of the Emperor's Star Academy caused him to feel an intense pressure. This was a silent declaration, a terrifying sense of cohesiveness. Chu Tianjiao turned his head and glanced at the faces of the Emperor's Star Academy, as he sighed in his heart. Being able to stand tall in the Chu country for thousands of years without weakening, the Emperor's Star Academy naturally had its own strengths. It was like a formless energy, and when this energy was condensed, it would cause people to feel a sense of suffocation. Elders, I have something to say, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me to say it. Chu Tianjiao stared at the people in the surroundings as he spoke. No one spoke. The atmosphere here was so oppressive that it made it hard for him to breathe. Speak. An instant later, Ren Qianqing spat out. Currently, the Royal Academy of Chu has merged with the Godly General Martial Palace. The royal clan wishes to form the strongest academy in the world, and we hope that the Emperor's Star Academy will be willing to merge with us. Chu Tianjiao slowly continued, in that case, the strength of the newly formed academy would be extremely terrifying. Regardless of teachers or resources, they would all be extremely terrifying. As for the Emperor's Star Academy, we will maintain the status quo. Upon hearing Chu Tianjiao's words, many people had cold smiles on their faces. Wanting to annex the Emperor's Star Academy? Was this even possible? As long as the Emperor's Star Academy agrees, after the merger, the royal clan will provide for the cultivation resources of all the teachers and students. Not only that, the royal clan will also distribute Yuan meteor stones to the teachers and students every month. Chu Tianjiao continued. However, the only reply he received was a deathly silence. Scram! A cold voice rang out. The one who spoke was Mustang. His back was facing Chu Tianjiao and his group, and he didn't even bother to turn his head back. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and attack. Chu Tianjiao froze, but the smile on his face didn't fade. He bowed to the elders of the Emperor's Star Academy, this junior shall take his leave. After which, he led his group away. Wait a minute. Ren Qianqing spat out, causing Chu Tianjiao to halt his steps. From now onwards, the Emperor's Star Academy will not allow any of you to enter. If any of you step within the boundaries of the Emperor's Star Academy, we will kill you without mercy. As the sound of Ren Qianqing's voice faded, the entire atmosphere was filled with an intense killing intent. That ice-cold tone of his caused Chu Tianjiao's heart to tremble. However, very quickly, the corners of his mouth curled up in a cold smile as he lifted his foot and continued walking away. The Emperor's Star Academy didn't directly deal with Chu Tianjiao. Firstly, they didn't have a good reason to do so. Secondly, if they directly dealt with Chu Tianjiao, the ones who would suffer would be the students of the Emperor's Star Academy. Even if a war were to break out one day, the Emperor's Star Academy would protect their bottom line until one side tore it apart. Francis arrived at the Emperor's Star Academy. Knowing of his relationship with Qin Wentian, the Emperor's Star Academy allowed him to enter and leave the academy freely. This time around, he delivered all the resources that Qin Wentian requested. The Divine Weapon Pavilion had already gathered all of them. After receiving the resources, Qin Wentian immediately started his cultivation. Despite the flames of rage in his heart, he didn't forget that his current strength was far from being sufficient. The next few days were extremely peaceful, but many people could smell the aura of a storm. This kind of calmness was akin to the brewing of a terrifying storm. The Emperor's Star Academy and the royal clan didn't make a move. They seemed to be waiting. These few days, there were more and more people arriving at the royal capital of Chu, riding on demonic beasts as they headed towards the royal palace. At the same time, there were also quite a number of students from the Emperor's Star Academy who left. Most of them were from the Knights Association. Such a scene caused the students of the Emperor's Star Academy to feel that a storm was about to arrive. Chapter 170. In the training grounds of the Emperor's Star Academy where Qin Wentian was located, demonic qi towered up to the heavens. This entire space was filled with a terrifying demonic aura. This demonic qi congregated into a mist, enveloping the entire training grounds. In the middle of the mist, Qin Wentian sat cross-legged. At this moment, his entire body was incomparably demonic. Streaks of demonic light flickered unceasingly as sounds rang out from within his body. It was as though his body was undergoing an unceasing transformation. At this moment, the demonic qi in the entire training grounds frenziedly converged towards Qin Wentian. The demonic light radiating from him grew increasingly resplendent, akin to the radiance of the astral constellations. Crackling sounds rang out, and in a short instant, the mist dissipated, all of it was absorbed into his body. The demonic light radiating from him also gradually faded away. Dong, dong, dong. A powerful rhythmic sound emanated from his body, akin to the throbbing of his heart. Even though he was just casually sitting there, one could still feel the intense vitality contained within his body. His vitality was many times more vigorous compared to before. Qin Wentian's eyelashes fluttered. Abruptly, his eyes snapped open as a terrifying demonic light radiated from within. The sharpness of the light was so terrifying that it could suck away the souls of those who saw it. That clean and neat face of his was filled with an intense sense of demonic handsomeness. Who? Exhaling, Qin Wendian stretched his body, as the crackling sounds of his bones resounded out. Clenching his fists, a crisp crackling sound could be heard. This was the feeling of being filled with strength. Right now, his physique was comparable to that of a demonic beast. However, this was only the first level of the fiend transformation art. In the future, if he condensed a beast-type astral soul and advanced to the second level, his demonic physique would grow even stronger. Right now, Qin Wendian could feel that even if he only had pure strength, he was already extremely terrifying. There were many demonic beasts that weren't at the astral constellation realm. Their strength came from the tyrannical strength of their fleshly bodies. Relying on his current physique to unleash innate techniques, the might of his attacks would be many times stronger. With regards to the results of his cultivation, Qin Wendian was extremely satisfied. Standing up, Qin Wendian retracted his aura and walked out of the training grounds. Wendian. Qin Yao, who was in the courtyard, couldn't help but walk over upon seeing Qin Wendian's appearance. Her heart ached as she gently caressed Qin Wendian's face. Smiling, she said, "You have to take care of your body when you cultivate, don't waste your days and nights." Qin Yao knew that Mountain's death was a huge blow to Qin Wendian. Back in the Emperor's Star Academy, Qin Wendian didn't have many friends. Luo Huan, Mountain and the others, Luo Huan, Mountain, and Qin Wendian had helped him in the Sky Harmony City. Don't worry, sister. Stellar martial cultivators would only grow stronger and stronger. A gentle smile appeared on Qin Wendian's face, causing Qin Yao to lightly nod her head. But you have to control the size well. I know. Qin Wendian understood that Qin Yao was concerned about him. What's the situation outside? Qin Wendian suddenly asked. The atmosphere is very tense. The Royal Academy has provoked them a few times, but there hasn't been any major conflict yet. I'm afraid it's only a matter of time. Qin Yao replied. Anyone with eyes could tell that the war between the royal clan and the Emperor's Star Academy would erupt at any moment. Currently, those clans were all keeping a low profile, waiting to see what would happen. The storm this time around would be unprecedented. The Emperor's Star Academy was a gigantic existence. If the royal clan wanted to swallow it up, it would be extremely difficult. Recently, demonic beasts had been rampaging in the skies above the royal capital. Those who had the authority to soar in the air were all at the Yuanfu realm. Many of them headed directly to the royal palace, but naturally, there were also quite a few who came to the Emperor's Star Academy. Naturally, these were the students who were out tempering themselves, as well as those who had already graduated. Those who were loyal to the Emperor's Star Academy were willing to return after hearing the news. Qin Wendian nodded. Sister, take good care of father. After speaking, Qin Wendian headed towards the direction of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. The 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion contained the Spirit Beast's testing grounds, the 8th level contained the Fiend Transformation Art, and what did the Azure Emperor leave behind on the 9th level? This time around, Qin Wendian wanted to go take a look. Once again arriving at the Heavenly Star Pavilion, Qin Wendian walked past the dust-covered old man. He bowed and walked past him. Do you wish to enter the final gate? That old man suddenly asked. Yes, senior. Qin Wendian nodded his head. If the old man was willing to guide him, it would naturally be for the best. Use your strongest strength and directly blast open the gate. If you are unable to do so before breaking through to Yuanfu, there's no need for you to come again after you step into Yuanfu. The old man calmly stated, his words causing Qin Wendian's gaze to freeze. Everything that the Azure Emperor left behind seemed to require one to be below Yuanfu. The Junlin Banquet, the Spirit Beast's testing grounds, as well as blasting open the final gate, all of these required one to be below Yuanfu. However, could it be that this final gate was even more difficult compared to the Junlin banquet and the spirit beasts testing grounds? Not only that, the current him had already cultivated the fiend transformation art. At this moment, Qin Wentian didn't notice that the eyes of the old man flickered with a brilliant light. In these thousands of years, Qin Wentian was undoubtedly the person closest to completing the Azure Emperor's test. Now that he had obtained the fiend transformation art, he should have already started cultivating it. If he couldn't blast open the final gate before breaking through to Yuanfu, he didn't know how long he would have to wait. Let's hope that this little fellow would succeed. Qin Wentian arrived at the final gate. Although it had been sealed for thousands of years, there wasn't a single speck of dust on it. Instead, it was glowing with a brilliant light. Qin Wentian's arterial circulation thrummed as a terrifying amount of divine energy frenziedly flowed towards his arms. With a ferocious stomp, it was as though the weight of a mountain was crushing downwards. Boom! An oppressive sound rang out, yet the gate still stood there unwaveringly. Evidently, Qin Wentian's attack had no way to shake it. A demonic aura gushed forth from Qin Wentian. His demeanor abruptly changed. Stepping out once more, he blasted out another terrifying palm strike. However, the gate still didn't budge in the slightest. Who, so strong? Qin Wentian's gaze froze, as the blood in his body thrummed. At this moment, his demeanor changed once more. The aura of a monarch descending from the heavens was mixed with a demonic aura, as though he was a paragon amongst demonic beasts. The divine energy within Qin Wentian's body surged. After a long period of time, he stepped out once more as he blasted out with both his palms, executing the forgotten imprint on his left hand and the falling mountain palms on his right. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out, causing the entire space to tremble. This caused those from the Heavenly Star Pavilion who were searching for innate techniques to be stunned as they inclined their heads and stared upwards. What was happening on the 7th level? It seemed that only Qin Wentian had the authority to enter the 7th level. The heart of the old man trembled when he heard the terrifying sound. This meant that Qin Wentian had a chance to break open the gate. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. Even with such an attack, he still had no way to break open the gate. Dang, dang! At this moment, the sound of a bell reverberated throughout the Emperor's Star Academy, causing Qin Wentian to furrow his brows. Ever since he entered the academy, he had never heard such a sound before. Qin Wentian hurriedly departed, only to see those from the Heavenly Star Pavilion exiting the Emperor's Star Academy, all heading in the same direction. I've been in the Emperor's Star Academy for 3 years, but this is the first time the bell has rung to summon all the elders and students. A voice sighed. Everyone knew that something major had happened. Upon hearing this voice, Qin Wentian's eyes abruptly opened, as a terrifying light flashed within them. What should have come, had finally come. Qin Wentian followed the crowd and once again arrived in front of the Emperor's Star Monument. Over there were a few silhouettes with their backs facing the crowd. They inclined their heads and stared at the monument that recorded the history and glory of the Emperor's Star Academy. Naturally, there was also the monument of Mountain and Zijun. Not too long after, a vast number of people gathered in front of the Emperor's Star Monument. It was an extremely majestic sight. Damn it, those bastards from the Royal Academy are clearly trying to stir up trouble. If they want to fight, they want to fight. Do you think our Emperor's Star Academy is afraid of them? Someone rushed over, as he howled in rage. That's right, there's no need for evidence for the deaths of Senior Mountain and Zijun. The Royal Academy must have borrowed the strength of the Royal Academy to kill them. Very quickly, many voices rang out, as the crowd gradually understood what had happened. So it turned out that today in the royal capital, there were a few students from the Emperor's Star Academy who were having a meal. Among them, there was a beautiful female student who was harassed by the students from the Royal Academy. The students from the Emperor's Star Academy were naturally enraged, and hence, a conflict broke out between both parties. The other party had long been prepared, and ruthlessly humiliated the students from the Emperor's Star Academy. Not only that, but one of the students from the Emperor's Star Academy managed to slip away and report the matter to the Emperor's Star Academy. But in hindsight, it was obvious that the other party had done this intentionally. This matter was quickly magnified, and many students from both parties joined in the fray, resulting in battles to the point where the disciplinary elder of the Royal Academy as well as the enforcers of the royal capital stepped out and crippled the cultivation bases of the students from the Emperor's Star Academy. But as for the students from the Royal Academy, they didn't do anything. Those with discerning eyes immediately understood that the Royal Academy was intentionally trying to ignite the flames of anger within the Emperor's Star Academy. In addition to the deaths of Tai Shan and Zi Jun, if the Emperor's Star Academy still wanted to endure this, they might as well disband. Because if they didn't take action, the Royal Academy would definitely provoke them again. One elder after another stood at the front. The person at the very front was Rin Qianqing. He turned around and faced the crowd. In an instant, the entire place fell silent. Everyone was waiting for Rin Qianqing to speak. Recently, some things have happened, and I'm sure everyone has heard of it. In the upcoming period of time, the Emperor's Star Academy might face a brutal war. Hence, if there are any students who are willing to leave the Emperor's Star Academy, I won't force you. In the future, when the storm has died down, you can come back again. Also, for those below the 5th level of arterial circulation, even if you don't want to leave, you are not allowed to leave the Emperor's Star Academy. In the Emperor's Star Academy, the number of students was the highest. Many of them didn't have a high cultivation base, and they wouldn't be of much help to the war that was about to erupt. Hence, the Emperor's Star Academy wouldn't force them to participate. And for those below the 5th level of arterial circulation, they weren't allowed to participate. If they participated, they would only be cannon fodder. The Emperor's Star Academy didn't need cannon fodder. These students were all outstanding youths, and it would be too much of a pity if they died just like that. Chapter 171. Lin Chong was the captain of the law enforcement squad. At this moment, he was leading a group of over 10 people in a leisurely stroll within the royal capital. Lin Chong's heart was filled with thoughts. He was well aware of the current situation in the imperial city. He was even forced to participate in it. The incident in the restaurant was planned by the higher-ups who ordered him to cooperate with the people from the royal school. In fact, Lin Chong was not very willing to participate in it, but he could not disobey the orders from the higher-ups. Hence, at this moment, he was filled with worry. He was worried that the Emperor's Star Academy would take revenge on him. Tomorrow, he would report this to the Royal Academy and see if he could change his position. Bzzz, abruptly, a sharp aura gushed forth, causing Lin Chong's eyes to narrow. After which, he saw numerous arrows descending from the heavens. These arrows shimmered with resplendent astral light, evidently formed from the condensation of astral energy. Lin Chong released his astral souls, as the aura of an 8th-level arterial circulation realm cultivator gushed forth. He blasted out a palm imprint towards the incoming arrows, but it was as though the arrows had eyes of their own. They actually bypassed his body and pierced towards the ordinary soldiers behind him. Piercing sounds rang out unceasingly as the arrows pierced through their throats. Lin Chong's heart instantly sank to the bottom of the valley. Who would have thought that revenge would come so quickly? An instant later, a sharp sword pierced through Lin Chong's throat. His body slumped to the ground, as did the rest of the soldiers. Blood flowed from their throats, dyeing the ground red. From afar, there were people approaching, and upon discovering the state of death of these soldiers, their hearts pounded wildly. Was the storm finally about to engulf the royal capital? Ji Qing was a law enforcement elder of the Royal Academy. His cultivation base was at the 3rd level of Yuanfu, and his combat prowess was extremely tyrannical. At this moment, he was walking within the Royal Academy with a frown on his face. Currently, the atmosphere in the Royal Academy was extremely tense. Everyone knew that a war with the Emperor's Star Academy would erupt at any moment. Not only that, the scale of the war would be unprecedented, because the Royal Academy wanted to eradicate the Emperor's Star Academy. Elder Ji. Occasionally, there would be people bowing to Ji Qing. Ji Qing casually replied, but in his heart, he was deep in thought. Elder Ji. Another person bowed to Ji Qing. But at this moment, Ji Qing suddenly felt an intense sense of danger. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. The person who had bowed to Ji Qing instantly closed in on him. The distance between the two of them was too close, and Ji Qing had not expected someone to attack him in the royal school. He could not react in time. Terrifying starlight circulated around Ji Qing's body. Starlight armor seemed to have appeared around him, and he could only focus on defense. Puchi. A sharp blade pierced through his armor as a terrifying black sword pierced through his heart. After that, the sword started to churn wildly as a destructive power erupted within his body, destroying his life force. Ji Qing saw a pair of cold eyes staring at him. The owner of those eyes was like a god of death, staring at him emotionlessly. Even if he was caught off guard, a third-level Yuanfu cultivator like Ji Qing wouldn't be assassinated so easily. There was only one reason why the assassin could do this. The strength of the assassin was far above his own. The spectators from afar cast their gazes over, only to see the figure slowly walking away. Only then did Ji Qing's body slowly collapse onto the ground. The hearts of the spectators pounded violently as their countenances became exaggerated. When they turned their gazes to that unremarkable silhouette, they discovered that the assassin had already disappeared from their line of sight. Someone tried to assassinate Elder Ji Qing. A roar rang out, igniting the already tense atmosphere in the Royal Academy. An instant later, several silhouettes appeared beside Ji Qing's corpse. Lock down the Royal Academy. Someone roared in rage. There's no need for that. Since the assassin could easily sneak in and kill Ji Qing in an instant, he would definitely be able to leave easily. A person spoke in a low voice, causing the crowd to turn silent. Ji Qing was none other than the disciplinary elder who had crippled a student of the Emperor Star Academy. Who was the one behind this, and who had the power to do so? The Emperor Star Academy didn't take the initiative to make a move, but rather, used the most direct method to respond. If the Royal Academy liked to use such underhanded methods, the Emperor Star Academy was willing to play along. Blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth. As the news of Lin Chong and Ji Qing's deaths spread out, the tension in the Royal Academy was on the verge of exploding. Finally, one morning, from the direction of the Royal Academy, several experts mounted demonic beasts as they departed. On the ground, there was also a vast crowd of people following behind them as they headed in the direction of the Emperor Star Academy. The Emperor Star Academy quickly received the news. With regards to the actions of the Royal Academy, they naturally had their eyes on it. Not long after the experts from the Royal Academy departed, the howls of demonic beasts could be heard from the Emperor Star Academy. At the same time, on the ground, there were also people who departed. At the same time, the Yi clan, O clan, as well as the other aristocratic clans, also departed. Such a storm quickly engulfed the entire royal capital. Currently, there were countless pairs of eyes staring at the Emperor Star Academy and the Royal Academy. Each and every action of theirs was the focus of attention. Today, the two academies no longer played any tricks in the shadows. Instead, they both sent out their strongest experts. Such news would definitely cause an earthquake, causing the entire royal capital to tremble. The Emperor Star Academy was about to clash head-on with the Royal Academy, and everyone knew that the Royal Academy was backed by the royal clan. In the Divine Weapon Pavilion, An Luyen stood on the roof of a building, gazing at the royal capital. Behind her, Yang Chen informed her of the movements of the Emperor Star Academy and the Royal Academy. This time around, the crisis the Emperor Star Academy is facing will be even more difficult compared to the previous one. An Luyen spoke in a low voice. Doesn't the Emperor Star Academy have a backer? Yang Chen asked. It should be the Azure Emperor Palace. From what I know, the influence of the Azure faction in the Azure Emperor Palace is getting weaker and weaker. And the Shao clan is one of the three main factions of the Nine Mystical Palace. Back then when Luo Tianya interfered with the Emperor's Star Academy, he had no choice but to compromise with the Azure Emperor Palace. But this time around, since Xiaolan came to Chu, he must have already considered the possibility of the Azure Emperor Palace. And Lu Yan slowly spoke. Yang Qin didn't really understand what she meant. After all, the level of contact he had with the Azure Emperor Palace and the Nine Mystical Palace wasn't as deep as in Lu Yan. However, he could faintly sense that in Liu Yan's power wasn't small at all. Other than the Divine Weapon Pavilion, the Star River Association and the other major clans were all paying close attention to the situation. In the royal capital, on a vast piece of flat land, the students from the Royal Academy and the Emperor's Star Academy halted their movements. They were only a few thousand meters apart from each other, and a terrifying battle intent radiated from them, pressing down on each other. In the airspace above both sides, demonic beasts circled in the air, while Yuanfu cultivators stood in the air. The total number of Yuanfu cultivators on both sides was over 100, and this was only the first time they clashed. From this, one could see how powerful the two powers were. Back when Qin Wentian was still in the Sky Harmony City, it was already extremely rare to find a Yuanfu cultivator. On the ground, the disciples at the arterial circulation realm stood there solemnly, their gazes heavy as they lined up in rows. The Emperor's Star Academy didn't force their students to participate in this storm, but as cultivators, they all had hot-blooded hearts. When the Emperor's Star Academy was in danger, how could they stand by the side and be cowards? As long as one was at the third level of arterial circulation, with the exception of a few, the majority of them were willing to fight for the sake of the Emperor's Star Academy. At this moment, the number of arterial circulation realm cultivators on both sides numbered in the hundreds, akin to a small-scale army. Both sides didn't speak. Just by standing there, the entire space was filled with a terrifying pressure, causing those spectating from afar to feel suffocated. The leader of the Emperor's Star Academy was none other than Ren Qianqing. In the past, he rarely appeared in front of others, but now, everyone was already familiar with him. In the Emperor's Star Academy, Ren Qianqing was one of the 3 vice-headmasters. The strength of the leaders of the Royal Academy couldn't be compared to Ren Qianqing, but their statuses were extremely illustrious. Xiaolan from the Nine Mystical Palace, Chu Tianjiao, the 3rd Prince of Chu, and the Crown Prince of Snowcloud, Xiao Lux. The 3 of them stood on the back of a powerful demonic beast, gazing downwards in the direction of the Emperor's Star Academy. Beside them, there were a few elders from the Royal Academy. Those from the Royal Academy and the Emperor's Star Academy were sizing each other up. Qin Wentian was also in the camp of the Emperor's Star Academy, and he was standing in the front of a small formation. In the formation that Qin Wentian was in, there were Qin Wentian, Luo Huan, Fan Lu, Luo Cheng, Yu Fei, and the others. They were all elites, and if a battle were to break out, they would be able to pierce straight into the hearts of their opponents. A large-scale battle was different from a chaotic battle. One had to pay particular attention to strategy. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with a cold light as he stared at the formation in front of the Royal Academy. In one of the formations, there was actually Orkan and the members of the Knights Association. They were all nurtured by the Emperor's Star Academy, but now, they were fighting for the Royal Academy against the Emperor's Star Academy. I can give the Emperor's Star Academy another chance. If you are willing to join the Royal Academy, I will preserve the Emperor's Star Academy's assets and not touch you in the slightest. Chu Tianjiao gazed at Ren Qianqing and the rest as he calmly spoke. However, Ren Qianqing only coldly glanced at him, and didn't even reply. Chu Tianjiao coldly laughed, as he shifted his gaze onto the members of the Emperor's Star Academy below. If you all leave now, I will definitely let bygones be bygones. Using your strength to fight against the strength of an entire country, isn't a wise choice. As the sound of Chu Tianjiao's voice faded, warhorses galloped over from afar. There were a few groups of youths, and they were the members of the Yi clan, O clan, and the other major powers. They were all willing to represent the Royal Academy in this battle. In terms of numbers, the Royal Academy had the absolute advantage. No one moved, but the hearts of the members of the Emperor's Star Academy were wavering. It wasn't that they wanted to flee, but rather, they were gradually losing the confidence to win this battle. After the merger of the Royal Academy and the godly General Martial Palace, they already had the advantage in terms of numbers. In addition to the participation of the members of the various major powers, the Royal Academy had the advantage in terms of numbers. At this moment, a silhouette stepped out, causing the members of the Emperor's Star Academy to be stunned. Qin Wendian took a few steps forward, as he stood in front of the members of the Emperor's Star Academy. Inclining his head, he stared at the silhouette in the air. The Royal Academy was supported by the royal clan, yet they were suppressed by the Emperor's Star Academy for 1,000 years. Now, in order to deal with the Emperor's Star Academy, they even merged with the godly General Martial Palace, using all sorts of methods to deal with the Emperor's Star Academy. I'm sure that the pressure they endured for 1,000 years must have been extremely painful. Qin Wendian calmly continued, "No one can replace our position. We are from the Emperor's Star Academy." As Qin Wendian spoke, his long hair fluttered in the wind, as though he was basking in the glory of the Emperor's Star Academy. At this moment, the students of the Emperor's Star Academy all felt their blood boiling. In order to deal with them, the royal clan had spent so much effort. They were from the Emperor's Star Academy. Chapter 172. Ever since the Emperor's Star Academy's founding, they had enjoyed too much glory. But today, they were faced with a tough challenge. Qin Wendian wielded the ancient halberd in his hands as he stood at the front. The blood in his body surged, and his demonic aura became incomparably demonic. Unknowingly, his stature grew taller and taller. That demonic aura was like that of a monarch descending from the heavens. His blazing battle intent caused the blood of the students of the Emperor's Star Academy to boil. Today, they would fight for glory, for a mission. In the direction of the Royal Academy, there were also a few silhouettes walking out. Among them were Orkan, Ho Tai, Chu Chen, Leng Ye, and many others. Their lineup was much more luxurious compared to that of the Emperor's Star Academy. However, when the students of the Emperor's Star Academy saw Qin Wendian standing there, they felt as though their hearts were at ease. Not long ago, Qin Wendian's group of 5 had won a complete victory over the Royal Academy. From both sides, the sounds of galloping horses could be heard. The youths of the Yi and O clans were all stirring, ready to fight at any moment. Luo Huan, Luo Cheng, Fan Lu and the rest stood behind Qin Wendian. Very swiftly, the astral souls of the students of the Emperor's Star Academy were all released. The light they emitted was so resplendent that it seemed as though it wanted to light up the entire sky. The Emperor's Star Academy only accepted stellar martial cultivators, and all of them possessed astral souls. Boom! The horses galloped forward, and the students of the Royal Academy also began their assault. They were divided into different camps, and at the very back of the camp, countless arrows pierced through the air, shooting towards the direction of the Emperor's Star Academy. The battle had finally erupted. Qin Wendian stepped forward as he howled in rage. It was as though he wanted to vent all his anger on this halberd strike. Boundless amounts of terrifying energy were infused into it, and the ancient halberd transformed into a terrifying beam of light, piercing through space as a roaring sound rang out, resembling a demonic dragon. Orkan and the rest bore the brunt of the attack. Their countenances stiffened, and they abruptly evaded the attack. The ancient halberd brushed past their shoulders, and the fearsome astral wind blew against their faces, causing a burning sensation. Puchi! The ancient halberd directly pierced into the body of one of the students behind them, sending him flying through the air as he continued to madly slam towards the back. The students behind him roared in rage, yet the sounds of chi-chi rang out unceasingly, only stopping when the third person was pierced by the ancient halberd. Yet, the Royal Academy's camp had sunk into a temporary state of chaos. Qin Wendian, what a terrifying power! Qin Wendian stepped out in large strides, as a second ancient halberd appeared in his hands. This time around, it was a divine weapon, the Fangtian halberd. The coldness of the astral light, as well as his demonic yet domineering silhouette, caused Orkan and the rest who were at the very front to feel an oppressive pressure gushing over. They were actually somewhat afraid of Qin Wentian. Fan Luo and the rest followed closely behind Qin Wentian. Their formation was the vanguard formation, the strongest group of people. Their role was to slaughter, ruthlessly slaughter, using their strongest aura to stun their opponents. On the left and right sides, there were two large phalanxes protecting Qin Wentian and the others from encirclement. Fan Li's bloodline limit was also unleashed, as a series of arrows shot out, transforming into streaks of golden lightning. Roar! A ferocious howl of rage rang out from the direction of the Royal Academy. Orkan and the rest were in a phalanx formation, and all of them had terrifying beast-type astral souls. When they let out their howls of rage, it was as though a myriad of beasts were galloping together, wanting to tear apart everything. Qin Wentian didn't bother with them. He took the lead, dashing towards Orkan and the rest. Qin Wentian's arrows protected his left and right, as the golden lightning bolts moved in tandem with his every step. As Fan Li's strength grew stronger, he could already control objects to a certain extent. Controlling the astral arrows was as easy as flipping his palms. This was his innate talent. The one facing Qin Wentian was Orkan. Beside him was Ho Tai, and behind him was Chu Chen. But even so, when Orkan saw Qin Wentian's aura, he actually lost all of his momentum. He had never imagined that Qin Wentian's aura would be this powerful, akin to an indestructible demon god. Bzzz. Qin Wentian made his move, his entire person akin to a bolt of lightning. His first strike was the mountain splitter stance of the Great Dream Halberd art. Infused with the power of his bloodline and the fiend transformation art, the might of this strike was beyond Orkan's imagination. Not only that, the ancient halberd in his hands could amplify the power of his attacks. But at this moment, Orkan could only face Qin Wentian head-on. The long spear in his hands exploded forth, resembling a blossoming lotus flower. Millions of spear lights shone resplendently like silver. However, the instant the lotus flower shattered, the beautiful fragments were blown away by the wind. The ancient halberd was indestructible, instantly piercing into Orkan's heart. This shocking scene caused the spectators to be dumbfounded. After which, Qin Wentian roared in rage as he spat out a terrifying sword light. The ancient halberd in his hands was lifted high into the air, as Orkan's body was stabbed into the ground. "Those who block me, die." An enraged roar rang out, causing the entire space to turn silent. The movements of the Royal Academy's members froze as they stared in shock at Orkan's corpse. A single strike, dead. At this moment, it was as though time had stopped. In the air, the Yuanfu cultivators of the O clan paled as they witnessed this scene. How tyrannical was this slaughter? Under the Yuanfu realm, other than Qin Wentian, there was no one else with such tyrannical aura. An elder from the O clan emitted a terrifying killing intent, as green veins popped out on his forehead. He wanted nothing more than to rush down and kill Qin Wentian, but he couldn't do so. This wasn't a battlefield where armies could slaughter each other as they pleased. The battle between the two academies had their own rules, and now that the Yuanfu cultivators didn't act, it was obvious that they had some reservations. Once a Yuanfu cultivator joined in the battle between arterial circulation realm cultivators, it would be a decisive battle, and the arterial circulation realm cultivators on the ground would only be cannon fodder. Chu Tianjiao obviously didn't want to directly engage in a decisive battle with the Emperor Star Academy. Although they had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers, they didn't have much of an advantage when it came to cultivators of the upper echelons. Hence, he would rather slowly kill the students of the Emperor Star Academy. When the Emperor Star Academy no longer had any students, there would no longer be any value in their existence. But if they were to directly engage in a decisive battle, it would be akin to a frenzied massacre. If that happened, Chu Tianjiao wouldn't even dare to say that he would be absolutely safe. If those hidden old freaks of the Emperor Star Academy decided to surround and kill him, he would definitely suffer. Who would dare to say that he would definitely not die? Hence, unless it was absolutely necessary, Chu Tianjiao wouldn't be willing to engage in a decisive battle with the Emperor Star Academy. He knew that the Emperor Star Academy wouldn't take the initiative to initiate a decisive battle. If they did, rivers of blood would flow from the students of the Emperor's Star Academy. They wouldn't even have the strength to resist against Yuanfu cultivators, and this was something that the Emperor's Star Academy didn't want to see. Hence, both sides agreed to allow students below the Yuanfu realm to fight first. Nobody dared to touch the bottom line and break the balance. After Qin Wendian killed Orkan and paused for a moment, the battle erupted once again. The students of the Emperor's Star Academy released their aura as they frenziedly unleashed their attacks. At the same time, many people moved in the direction of Qin Wendian. Their intentions were clear with a single glance. If Qin Wendian died in such a chaotic battle, he could only blame himself for his incompetence. In the future, even if the Emperor's Star Academy wanted to pursue the matter, who would he pursue? Those at the Yuanfu realm didn't even step out to kill him. However, when they saw Qin Wendian killing a student with a single step, the hearts of those from the royal clan trembled. The current Qin Wendian was much stronger compared to the time he participated in the Junlin banquet. No wonder Sikong Mingyue wasn't his opponent, and was easily injured by him. Executing the Garuda movement technique, Qin Wendian's silhouette was as swift as the wind. His left hand blasted out a terrifying palm imprint, akin to a mountain peak, while his right hand wielded the ancient halberd. Every time he slashed out, someone would die. Qin Wendian forcefully carved out a path of blood, and no one could obstruct him. Luo Qingdao, Yu Fei's sword, Luo Huan's control, and Fan Li's arrows all followed Qin Wendian's movements. They were akin to killing machines, taking lives one after another, disrupting the formation of many students. Roar! A terrifying roar thundered out as several palm imprints blasted towards Qin Wendian, wanting to bury Qin Wendian within. Chu Qin stood behind him, amplifying the attack power of those attacking Qin Wendian. In such a battle, the amplification from his astral soul was much more useful compared to his personal combat prowess. The ancient halberd danced about, as though there was a gigantic Xuanwu protecting Qin Wendian, howling madly. The attacks blasted over, yet none of them could break through his defense. Bzzz. A resplendent beam of light flashed as the ancient halberd swept out, arcing through the air in an arc. Qin Wendian's silhouette flickered as he soared through the air. Both his feet stomped on the ground as he blasted out two falling mountain palms, akin to two mountain peaks. His silhouette dashed towards Chu Chen, who was behind him. Chu Chen's countenance stiffened. He had seen through Qin Wendian's strength. If he wanted to kill someone, no one would be able to stop him. Chu Chen retreated, but it was as though Fan Lu knew what Qin Wendian was thinking. Numerous arrows whistled through the air as they shot towards Chu Chen, sealing off his path of retreat. Chu Chen's countenance was incredibly unsightly to behold. However, he only saw Qin Wendian whistling through the air as his demonic eyes erupted forth with a domineering aura. Qin Wendian was the only one under the heavens. Chu Chen felt as though he was about to be sucked into that pair of eyes, not daring to resist. Pooh! When the ancient halberd pierced through his skull, Chu Chen didn't even know that he had been sucked into a dreamscape. That instant was sufficient to determine his fate. Orkan had died, and Chu Chen, who possessed the bloodline of the royal clan, had also died. These two were the top rankers of the Junlin banquet. Upon seeing this scene, the countenances of the spectators in the air turned ashen. The Royal Academy had the absolute advantage in terms of numbers, but in terms of aura, they were actually at a disadvantage. Qin Wendian's group was like a hot knife cutting through butter, with no one able to block them. This was an absolute suppression. This was because Qin Wendian was simply too powerful at the arterial circulation realm. Those from the Emperor's Star Academy were also staring at the battlefield. Their eyes flashed with sharpness as expressions of gratification could be seen on their faces. Initially, they were still worried that Qin Wendian would be surrounded and annihilated, but now that they had witnessed Qin Wendian's tyrannical combat prowess, they could rest assured. As long as one didn't use Yuanfu, he was invincible. The current Qin Wendian could be said to be the strongest cultivator in Chu below Yuanfu. Under Yuanfu, he was invincible. Chapter 173. On the battlefield, in the air, Orkhan's father had an expression of agony on his face. Orkhan's talent was extraordinary, and he was extremely outstanding in the O clan. But now, he had died in the hands of Qin Wentian. He would never forget that Orphan had suffered the same fate. At this moment, his veins were bulging as his killing intent surged. "It's useless, Janice." Orkhan's father howled in rage in his heart. Janice was Orkhan's teacher and had a close relationship with him. He had secretly provided Janice with a large amount of cultivation resources, and as long as Janice could kill Qin Wentian, he would allow him to escape to a faraway place, and at the same time, reward him handsomely. However, Janice had failed, resulting in Orkhan's death today. His heart was filled with hatred. If he had valued Qin Wentian earlier, he would have long sent powerful Yuanfu cultivators to assassinate him. Now that Qin Wentian was at the arterial circulation realm, if he wanted to kill him, only a Yuanfu cultivator would be able to do so. However, Chu Tianjiao didn't want to break the stalemate so quickly. The Royal Academy's momentum grew weaker and weaker. Although they had the advantage in numbers, it wasn't easy for them to kill their opponents in a short period of time. But Qin Wentian and the others were different. Whenever he saw someone powerful in the Royal Academy's camp, he would kill that person. If this continued, the Royal Academy would be defeated sooner or later. Upon seeing this scene, O Fu's father felt joy in his heart as he whispered, "Your Highness, if Qin Wentian doesn't die, it would be extremely difficult for us to win." Chu Tianjiao glanced at his father, and naturally understood his thoughts. His eyes flickered as he commanded, "Retreat." As the sound of his voice faded, the Royal Academy's cultivators retreated as they fought. The Emperor Star Academy's morale soared as they chased after their opponents. However, they didn't overdo it. After all, there were still many Yuanfu cultivators on the battlefield. If they chased after their opponents, who knew what would happen? Both sides retreated back to their respective camps. In the middle of the battlefield, countless corpses could be seen, as fresh blood dyed the ground red. In this short period of time, 70 to 80 people had died on the battlefield. This was war. The eyes of many from the Emperor Star Academy and Royal Academy turned red. Among those who died were their friends. Not long ago, they were still playing around with them, but now, they had become ice-cold corpses. Only now did they realize how cruel the world of cultivation was. In the future, if they wanted to grow stronger, they would have to experience even more. Qin Wentian stood in front of the crowd from the Emperor's Star Academy. Inclining his head, he stared at the skies, his eyes filled with a demonic killing intent. The students of the Imperial City were all young people. It should have been a paradise for cultivation, but now, because of the struggle for power, it had become a cold-blooded battlefield. Chu Tianjiao and the rest also saw Qin Wentian, as killing intent flashed in their eyes. Evidently, Qin Wentian had already been included in the list of people who had to be killed. However, they were worried that the Emperor's Star Academy would go crazy, and thus, they didn't dare to act rashly. "Retreat!" Chu Tianjiao coldly commanded, as the students of the Royal Academy began to retreat. "Return to the Academy!" Ren Qianqing shouted, as the students of the Emperor's Star Academy also left. Although the Emperor's Star Academy had won this battle, no one felt relaxed. Everyone felt as though they were carrying a huge mountain on their backs, and their hearts were heavy. This was only the beginning of the battle. In the Royal Academy, Xiao Lan, Chu Tianjiao and the rest were gathered together. Even the Yi clan, O clan, and the other clans were present. Xiao Lan's fingers drummed on the armrest of his chair, as his expression turned gloomy. He was extremely dissatisfied with the result of the first battle. "I don't wish to stay in Chu for too long. At most, I will take down the Emperor's Star Academy within 3 months." Xiao Lan's indifferent voice was like a command. The secret of the Azure Emperor was hidden in the Emperor's Star Academy, and the first thing he had to do was to make the Emperor's Star Academy submit. If they didn't submit, he would destroy them. But even so, he didn't have much time to stay here. He had too many competitors in the 9 continents. If he stayed here for too long, it would be hard to guarantee that he wouldn't be left behind. If that happened, it would be extremely shameful. Young Master Xiao, at the arterial circulation realm, it would be extremely difficult for us to suppress our opponents. Fu's father stated, if we can't suppress the Emperor's Star Academy, the only way to make them submit is through a Yuanfu battle. Xiao Lan's countenance was calm as he listened to his father's words. After which, he turned to Chu Tianjiao and asked, "What do you think?" Chu Tianjiao was silent for a moment before replying in a low voice, "I will send some arterial circulation realm cultivators from the army to mix in with the students of the Royal Academy, and conduct another arterial circulation battle." "What if they still can't win?" Xiao Lan asked. "In that case, we can only proceed with a Yuanfu battle," Chu Tianjiao calmly stated. Yuanfu cultivators were the elites of Chu, and if he could avoid such a battle, he would definitely do so. Once the battle started, the deaths of Yuanfu cultivators would undoubtedly cause the strength of Chu to decline. Qin Wentian, Fu's father intentionally reminded Chu Tianjiao. "If we use Yuanfu cultivators to kill Qin Wentian, I'm afraid that the Emperor's Star Academy would be angered. Not only that, if we were to infuriate the Emperor's Star Academy, who would bear the consequences?" Chu Tianjiao murmured, his gaze fixed on Fu's father. He naturally understood his father's intentions. Chu Tianjiao naturally wanted Qin Wentian to die, but he had to consider the possible consequences. "We don't have to kill him." Someone from the Yi clan spoke. This person was Yi Luyang. "Old Yi, what do you think?" Chu Tianjiao looked at Yi Luyang. "There are secrets on Qin Wentian's body, and we can capture him alive. If we fail, the Emperor's Star Academy wouldn't go crazy. But if we succeed, we won't kill him, and the Emperor's Star Academy would hold back in fear of harming the innocent. In the future, when the Emperor's Star Academy fights back, we can release Qin Wentian. However, this period of time is sufficient for us to do many things." Yi Luyang revealed a scheming expression, causing Chu Tianjiao's eyes to flash with a bright light as he laughed. "Old Ye's plan is indeed brilliant. However, how should we execute it?" Yi Luyang cast a glance at Chu Tianjiao. From the calm countenance of Chu Tianjiao, he couldn't see anything amiss. However, he understood that Chu Tianjiao had long since wanted to capture Qin Wentian alive. Yet, Chu Tianjiao chose to wait for someone else to speak. The relationship between Qin Wentian, the O clan, and the Yi clan was extremely poor. "Let the O clan execute it, with the Yi clan as support." Yi Luyang spoke, as he and Chu Tianjiao turned their gazes onto Fu's father. Fu's father silently cursed at the shrewdness of these people, but he hardened his heart and agreed, "Fine. Since this is the case, you guys can discuss the details." Chu Tianjiao smiled. "Regardless of the outcome, I will not allow the O clan and Yi clan to fall into danger." Seeing the smile on Chu Tianjiao's face, Yi Luyang and Fu both expressed their gratitude. After returning to the academy, Qin Wentian began his cultivation. Such a frenzied battle was extremely exhausting. He could only use Yuan meteor stones to replenish his Yuan energy, and at the same time, continue to condense his divine energy. When his energy recovered, Qin Wentian could clearly feel that his arterial pathways were about to undergo a transformation. It was as though they had widened a little. It was extremely obvious that such a frenzied battle would greatly increase his strength. In Qin Wentian's heart, he was extremely anxious. Ultimately, his strength was still too weak. If he could condense his arterial pathways into a Yuanfu and condense the Yuan energy in his body into a liquid form, storing it within the Yuanfu pool, then this little bit of exhaustion would be nothing. At the Yuanfu realm, astral energy would condense into liquid droplets. Every single droplet contained a large amount of astral energy. At the same time, an ocean of Yuan energy would appear within his body, also known as the Yuanfu pool. The Yuan energy droplets would then be stored within the Yuanfu pool, as though it was inexhaustible. And as one's cultivation grew stronger, the Yuanfu pool would expand as well, storing even more Yuan energy droplets. When one's cultivation reached the peak of Yuanfu, the Yuanfu pool would transform into a true ocean of Yuan energy, and within it, astral souls would be born. As for the later stages, Qin Wentian wasn't too clear. Maybe it would be the same as the memories he obtained from the tiny astral being. Outside the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect, there was a terrifying constellation. He didn't know if that was the realm after Heavenly Dipper. Sometimes, he would wonder, how strong was his old fogey's cultivation base? Most probably, even the current him wouldn't be able to reach that level. Thinking of this, Qin Wentian would occasionally feel depressed in his heart. That old fogey's father was an extremely powerful character, yet he himself was constantly facing danger. However, this was merely a thought. To truly be strong, one had to take things one step at a time. He believed that he would be able to reach that level sooner or later. After his cultivation ended, Qin Wentian went to the Divine Weapon Pavilion. He wasn't worried about his own safety, as Qin Wentian knew that there were people in the Emperor's Star Academy protecting him from the shadows. And Lu Yen personally received him, and Qin Wentian called for several weaponsmiths to assist him in forging weapons. He himself was inscribing divine imprints on his weapons, and started to forge divine weapons in batches. Today, some of the weaponsmiths in the Divine Weapon Pavilion were truly shocked. Before this, they had heard many rumors about Qin Wentian, but today, they truly admired Qin Wentian, to the point of worship. In the entire Chu country, there weren't many people who could forge divine weapons in batches. However, Qin Wentian's thoughts were different. To forge divine weapons in such a frenzied manner, the consumption of materials was also extremely shocking. However, Lu Yen didn't hold anything back and cooperated with him, disregarding the results. This caused Qin Wentian to remember this favor in his heart. After returning to the Emperor's Star Academy, Qin Wentian and the elders distributed the divine weapons, and at the same time, made sufficient preparations for the next round of battles. Finally, the Royal Academy and the Emperor's Star Academy walked out once again. And as though they had some sort of tacit understanding, they returned to the location where the previous battle took place. The experts of the two sides faced off against each other. This time around, the Royal Academy had more people than the Emperor's Star Academy. Their numbers were more than twice that of the Emperor's Star Academy. In the air, the silhouettes of the Royal Academy stood loftily, gazing down with disdain as killing intent permeated the air. Qin Wentian stood on the ground, his acute senses telling him that there were many people staring at him. Inclining his head, he stared at the air in the distance, and saw several pairs of eyes flickering with killing intent. Xiaolan also calmly glanced at Qin Wentian, the look in his eyes was like he was looking down at an ant. As someone from the Xiao faction of the Nine Mystical Palace, he naturally wouldn't place Qin Wentian in his eyes. This person actually rejected the opportunity he had given him. In that case, his ending was already destined. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a Heavenly Dipper sovereign protecting him, he would have long since ordered his subordinates to kill Qin Wentian. In his eyes, although Qin Wentian had talent, he didn't know how high the heavens were. He also didn't know what position he stood at. Chapter 174. Those from the Royal Academy split into 3 formations, advancing towards the students of the Emperor's Star Academy. Behind them, archers took down the bows on their backs, arrows knocked to the bowstring, ready to go at any time. Soldiers from the army? A cold light flickered in Ren Qianqing's eyes as he stared at Chu Tianjiao. Your Highness, are you planning to mobilize the strength of the army? The eyes of the elders of the Emperor's Star Academy turned cold. Was Chu Tianjiao forcing them to engage in a decisive battle? If Chu Tianjiao mobilized a large number of soldiers from the army, the students of the Emperor's Star Academy naturally wouldn't be able to outlast them. Luckily, the rebel army was too powerful, and the royal clan couldn't afford to send too many experts into the royal capital to participate in the war against the Emperor's Star Academy. The students of the godly General Martial Palace are originally the reserve force of the army. Senior, why are you making a fuss over nothing? Chu Tianjiao laughed. Ren Qianqing had no idea what Chu Tianjiao was thinking. Bows and arrows. Qin Wendian coldly snorted. At the back of the Emperor Star Academy, a group of students also took out their bows and arrows. Astral light flashed as the arrows from both sides pierced through the air, filling the air with a rain of arrows. Fatty Fan Le glanced at the rain of arrows as he licked his lips. Sadly, he wasn't strong enough yet. If not, he would be able to make use of these arrows. Currently, his control over them was still limited. If it wasn't for Fan Li's control, the killing power of the arrows wouldn't be sufficient. They could only break the formation, and could be easily blocked by close-range attacks. Both sides advanced forwards, and abruptly, a dazzling beam of astral light shot up into the skies. The silhouette in the air discovered that the students of the Emperor's Star Academy were all equipped with different types of divine weapons. Qin Wendian had forged spears, swords, axes, shields, and other divine weapons, allowing the students of the Emperor's Star Academy to choose the most suitable ones. Both sides finally clashed against each other. Beams of cold light slashed down from the skies. Sword light, spear light, mountain-splitting axes, all of them were incomparably tyrannical. In that instant of collision, the Emperor's Star Academy obtained a complete victory, killing several students from the Royal Academy while suffering 0 casualties. All of them are divine weapons, and they are all second-ranked or above. The expression of the figure in the air above the Royal Academy was extremely unsightly. The Royal Academy relied on the royal clan, but they didn't even have such equipment. There weren't many people who had divine weapons. Seems like it was provided by the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Chu Tianjiao's eyes flickered. He had always been keeping track of Qin Wendian's movements, and had paid a visit to the Divine Weapon Pavilion before. It's time to move ahead of schedule. Chu Tianjiao murmured in his heart. After which, he laughed, since the disciples are competing against each other, we can't just sit idly by. Would the elders of the Emperor's Star Academy please guide us? Chu Tianjiao's voice reverberated through the air. Momentarily, the countenances of those around him turned solemn as they released their auras. Stepping forward, the howls of demonic beasts could be heard. You want a decisive battle? Those from the Emperor's Star Academy couldn't see through Chu Tianjiao's intentions. Not long after the sound of Chu Tianjiao's voice faded, the sound of wind whistling could be heard from afar. The Yuanfu cultivators who were hiding in the shadows all appeared, surrounding the Yuanfu cultivators of the Emperor's Star Academy. Prepare for battle. Ren Qianqing calmly commanded. The Yuanfu cultivators nodded their heads as they dispersed. A battle between Yuanfu cultivators naturally required space, or else they wouldn't be able to unleash their full potential. Very swiftly, the entire space was filled with Yuanfu cultivators. Such a scene caused the hearts of those spectating from afar to pound violently. The battle was about to begin. Roar! The demonic beasts howled in rage as both sides clashed against each other. Even Chu Tianjiao and Xiao Lan stepped out, joining the fray as they searched for their own opponents. Resplendent astral souls frenziedly blossomed in the air, as destructive currents of energy swept across the area. A battle between Yuanfu cultivators was truly terrifying. Qin Wendian's ancient halberd pierced into the heart of another Yuanfu cultivator, as he inclined his head, his heart pounding. He didn't expect that the decisive battle would erupt so quickly. This time around, Chu Tianjiao's determination was truly great. Abruptly, Qin Wendian felt his entire body turning cold. In front of him, a silhouette could be seen walking over. This person was mixed in with the students of the Royal Academy, yet at this moment, Qin Wendian could feel an extreme sense of danger from him. Disguise. Qin Wendian pulled out his ancient halberd as he explosively retreated. However, the speed of that person was too fast. His entire person transformed into a blur as a gigantic palm imprint slammed towards Qin Wendian, wanting to smash Qin Wendian to death with a single palm strike. However, at the same instant, a black-colored silhouette dashed out. A black-colored sword pierced into the palm imprint, causing a thunderous sound to echo out as a terrifying aura permeated the area. Evidently, those from the Emperor's Star Academy had taken precautions against Qin Wendian, and there were also people secretly protecting Qin Wendian. One couldn't help but say that Chu Tianjiao's choice to make a move against Qin Wendian after the decisive battle was too good. The other Yuanfu cultivators had already started their battles, and had no time to care about anything else. Someone is dealing with Qin Wendian. Ren Qianqing coldly snorted. Momentarily, several Yuanfu elders descended from the skies. However, their opponents all unleashed powerful attacks in an attempt to obstruct them. Yi Wu's silhouette descended from the skies as a tricolored sword slashed towards Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian inclined his head as he brandished his ancient halberd in an impenetrable manner. Qi! A gigantic sword slashed downwards. Qin Wendian's body was suppressed to the point where he had no way to retreat. At the same time, another Yuanfu cultivator erupted forth with his aura, as he directly grabbed towards Qin Wendian. Son of a bitch! Fan Le howled in rage as he controlled his arrows to fly towards that Yuanfu cultivator. However, all of them were deflected by his opponent's palms. Qin Wendian was already at a disadvantage against Yi Wu. He retreated step by step, and now that there was another Yuanfu cultivator, his footsteps were all in disarray. Scram! A thunderous roar thundered out as Ren Qianqing soared through the air. A fearsome golden sword appeared in his hands as he abruptly slashed out. The terrifying sword light slashed apart everything, and several Yuanfu realm cultivators had their heads pierced through, dying instantly. Ren Qianqing's entire body transformed into a shadow as he dashed towards Qin Wendian. Yi Wu once again unleashed an attack towards Qin Wendian. Yuanfu cultivators had the advantage of being able to soar in the air, but arterial circulation realm cultivators had no way to make up for it. With a roar of rage, Qin Wendian's long hair fluttered in the wind as he swept out with his ancient halberd once again. However, at this instant, Qin Wendian's countenance paled. He could feel the threat of death approaching from behind, and only now did he react. At this moment, it was already impossible for him to turn around and block. He could only frantically circulate his divine energy to protect his back. Puchi! A light sound rang out as a piercing pain pierced through the heart. A short sword had pierced into Qin Wendian's body, and not only that, it was in the position of his heart. This attack was aimed at Qin Wendian's life. Wendian! Luo Huan and Fan Li's countenances turned deathly pale. They halted their steps, only to see that Luo Huan's beautiful eyes were completely devoid of life. Why? After Mountain's death, was Wendian going to die as well? Fatty Fan Lu felt a deep pain in his heart. That carefree and uninhibited youth was so amiable to his friends, but when facing his enemies, he was tyrannical and unrestrained. This was his best friend, his brother. Was he going to die today? Chu Tianjiao cast a glance downwards, as his gaze froze. Evidently, killing Qin Wendian wasn't part of his plan. In that case, who was the Yi clan, or the O clan? At this moment, the members of the Yi and O clan all had puzzled expressions on their faces. Who was the person who had pierced the short sword into Qin Wendian's body? Die! With a howl, Ren Qianqing's silhouette arrived. His terrifying palms directly smashed the head of his opponent into smithereens. Since that person had given Qin Wendian a fatal blow, he should have already predicted his own ending. There was no need to doubt this point. The Emperor Star Academy would never allow the person who killed Qin Wendian to leave alive. Yi Wu had already retreated into the air. He knew how dangerous it would be if he continued to stay there. Ren Qianqing's killing intent gushed forth as he slashed out with his palms, massacring the students of the Royal Academy. Ren Qianqing was truly enraged. He inclined his head and stared at Chu Tianjiao. Even Chu Tianjiao couldn't help but feel his heart trembling. This unexpected turn of events would cause the Emperor's Star Academy to go crazy. I didn't intend to kill him. Chu Tianjiao spoke. However, upon seeing the look in Ren Qianqing's eyes, he could only bitterly smile. Even if he tried to explain himself now, it would be useless. Ren Qianqing wrapped his arms around Qin Wendian's body, using his astral energy to seal Qin Wendian's wounds. He then soared up into the air as he roared, "Retreat!" The eyes of those from the Emperor's Star Academy turned red as their killing intent surged. However, after hearing Ren Qianqing's words, they still retreated. Chu Tianjiao waved his hands, ordering them not to give chase. The assassination attempt on Qin Wentian had already thoroughly enraged the Emperor's Star Academy. He didn't want them to go crazy. His silhouette landed on the ground, staring at the headless corpse. This person was none other than the person who killed Qin Wentian. It would be extremely difficult to ascertain his identity now. Things are getting troublesome. Chu Tianjiao murmured. He didn't know if that attack had taken Qin Wentian's life. However, Chu Tianjiao quickly adjusted his emotions. Since it had already happened, there was no point in thinking about it. What he needed to do now was to deal with the madness of the Emperor's Star Academy. How do you plan to deal with this? Xiaolan landed on the ground, his countenance calm. He didn't really care. Since things had reached this point, it was fine as well. Using offense as defense. Chu Tianjiao replied, as a sharp glint of light flashed in his eyes. Now, they had to attack, pressuring the Emperor's Star Academy, completely eliminating any future threats. Xiaolan cast a glance at Chu Tianjiao, silently praising him for his talent. This was undoubtedly the best method. In that case, let us prepare to slaughter the Emperor's Star Academy. Xiaolan spoke, his words causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. From now onwards, it would be a situation where neither side would rest until the other was dead. The incident that happened during the duel quickly spread throughout the royal capital. Many people were sighing at Chu Tianjiao's madness. To think that he actually gave the order to assassinate Qin Wentian. What they didn't know was that Qin Wentian's death wasn't part of Chu Tianjiao's plan. Naturally, the Yi clan and the O clan wouldn't admit that they were the culprits. This matter had become a mystery. However, the people of the royal capital were also extremely concerned about Qin Wentian's life and death. This young genius was the most dazzling star of the royal capital this year. If he were to die here today, it would truly be a pity. Chapter 175. In a room within the Emperor's Star Academy, several elders were gathered together, staring at the figure lying on the bed. Traces of worry could be seen in their eyes. How is it? Ren Qianqing anxiously asked as he saw the elder sitting on the bed turn around. Strange, strange. The life force in his heart is extremely vigorous, and there seems to be a special energy in his bloodline, circulating through his heart, allowing his heart to maintain its life force and slowly recover. The elder murmured in a low voice, as shock could be seen in his eyes. If it was someone else, they would have already died. Everyone in the room tensed up as they clenched their fists tightly, exhaling a mouthful of turbid air. Will his life be in danger? Ren Qianqing asked. He didn't die the instant he was struck. With his vigorous life force, as long as he recuperates properly, he should be able to slowly recover. The elder spoke again, causing everyone in the room to heave a sigh of relief. Wentian. Qin Yao's tears turned into a smile as she sat on the bed, gently stroking Qin Wentian's forehead. Her face was filled with tears, she had almost been scared to death. Qin Wentian had been struck in the heart. Everyone, disperse. Temporarily seal the news, and send people to guard this place. Ren Qianqing commanded, as the crowd dispersed. The elder who was proficient in healing stayed behind, clicking his tongue in wonder in his heart. A cultivator at the arterial circulation realm actually had such a vigorous life force. How strange. Luo Huan walked to the bed, as a radiant smile appeared on her face. She murmured to herself, Wentian, Mountain has already left. Don't abandon your senior sister as well. After speaking, she departed. The instant she turned, the smile on her face vanished, replaced by a cold glint of light. The 9 mystical palace and the royal clan of Chu. The hatred between them grew deeper and deeper. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. In these 3 days, the conflict between the Emperor's Star Academy and the royal clan had completely erupted. They no longer gathered their strength for direct clashes, but instead sent out Yuanfu cultivators to hunt them down. As for the arterial circulation realm cultivator Wu Xiu, he was forbidden from leaving the academy. The moment he stepped out, he would be in danger of death. Both sides had completely torn apart all pretense of cordiality. Even Chu Tianjiao didn't dare to casually roam outside. If the Emperor's Star Academy went crazy, there was a high possibility that they would assassinate him. During these 3 days, there were constant reports of casualties on both sides. In the most disastrous ambush, the Emperor's Star Academy was ambushed by experts from the Royal Academy. Fortunately, the experts from the Royal Academy managed to arrive in time to provide reinforcements. In that battle, 4 Yuanfu realm cultivators and 8 arterial circulation realm cultivators had died. A true storm had already engulfed the entire royal capital. In the Emperor's Star Academy, Qin Wentian was still unconscious. Beside him sat 2 beautiful young ladies. "Qingcheng, it's been hard on you these few days." Qin Yao stared at the beautiful silhouette sitting opposite her as an expression of gratitude appeared on her face. "Of course, I'm good at this," Mo Qingcheng smiled sweetly at Qin Yao, before continuing to feed Qin Wentian the medicinal soup. Staring at the side profile of Mo Qingcheng, Qin Yao fell into a daze. Smiling, she replied, "If only you could always take care of him like this." "Sure, I'll let this Dumbo take advantage of me." Mo Qingcheng smiled sweetly, before suddenly realizing the meaning of Qin Yao's words. Raising her head, she saw Qin Yao's beautiful eyes blinking, causing Mo Qingcheng to blush. "What I meant was to take care of him until he wakes up." I know. What else do you mean?" Qin Yao smiled ambiguously, causing Mo Qingcheng to silently curse herself for talking too much. "I wonder when he will wake up." Qin Yao's countenance was filled with worry. "Don't worry, he's recovering well." Mo Qingcheng consoled. Actually, she knew that Qin Wentian's injuries were extremely heavy, and he would be unconscious for quite a few days. Qin Yao lightly nodded her head. "Qingcheng, I'll go see if father has finished brewing the medicine. I'll bring it over to you later." After speaking, Qin Yao left. Mo Qingcheng slowly fed the bowl of medicine into Qin Wentian's mouth, before wiping his mouth clean. She then murmured to herself, "Dumbo, this is the second time I've brewed medicine for you. You better get well soon." Mo Qingcheng propped her chin up with her hands, staring at Qin Wentian in a daze. She didn't expect that the person she had brewed medicine for was Qin Wentian. Maybe this was fate. Staring at that handsome face, quiet and peaceful, she could still remember the first time she met him. Back then, he was still a young and immature youth. This year, he must have suffered a lot. And now, he almost lost his life. What a Dumbo. As she stared at him, Mo Qingcheng gradually grew more and more infatuated. Stretching out her hands, she pinched Qin Wentian's cheeks as a mischievous expression appeared on her face. This fellow was getting more and more handsome. Qin Wentian seemed to have felt something. His eyelashes fluttered as he slowly opened his eyes. After which, he saw a flawlessly beautiful face with a panic-stricken expression on it. Her hands were still pinching his cheeks. Swish! Mo Qingcheng retracted her hands with lightning speed. Upon seeing Qin Wentian blinking his eyes, her face instantly turned red. She wanted nothing more than to find a hole in the ground to hide in. "Let me see if you can feel it. Seems like it's really effective. You've really woken up." Mo Qingcheng pretended to smile. However, Qin Wentian didn't say anything, he only stared at her, causing her face to turn so red that it seemed as though blood would drip out at any moment. Seeing the shy expression on Mo Qingcheng's face, Qin Wentian felt his heart pounding. The Mo Qingcheng at this moment was too beautiful. "Come here." Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. Mo Qingcheng's eyelashes fluttered as she blinked her eyes. However, she still lowered her head and moved closer to Qin Wentian. Her heart pounded rapidly, this was the first time she felt so nervous. only to see Qin Wendian stretching out his hands and pinching her cheeks twice. After which, he smiled, "We're even now." Mo Qingqing froze, her face flushed red. "I'll go get the medicine." Mo Qingqing ran away with her tail between her legs. Staring at her disappearing silhouette, a radiant smile appeared on Qin Wendian's face as he murmured, "Thank you." Today, Mo Qingqing was in a daze. Seeing her embarrassed expression, Qin Wendian would occasionally crack a joke or two. This caused Qin Yao to be extremely happy. It seemed like there really was hope for Qin Wendian and Qingqing to be together. For the next few days, Qin Wendian recovered very quickly. On the 5th day, he was already able to cultivate. The tempest in the royal capital continued to rage, but the intense battles seemed to be very far away from Qin Wendian. Mustang, Luo Huan and the rest would occasionally come to visit Qin Wendian, but they didn't inform him of the situation outside. They only told him to focus on his cultivation, and warned him that before he stepped into Yuanfu, he was not allowed to participate in the battles outside. This caused a bitter smile to appear on Qin Wendian's face. It seemed like the Emperor's Star Academy was worried that he would be assassinated again, and didn't want him to take any more risks. Qin Wendian also didn't want to create more trouble for the Emperor's Star Academy. He quietly cultivated by himself, and finally, a month after the assassination attempt, Qin Wendian finally broke through to the arterial circulation realm, stepping into the final realm of the arterial circulation realm. He was only a step away from Yuanfu. After stepping into the 9th level of arterial circulation, Qin Wendian cultivated for a few more days, stabilizing his foundation. At the same time, he didn't forget to cultivate his innate techniques. Currently, Qin Wendian had finally mastered the 4th stance of the Thousand Hands imprint, the Kuji imprint. Its might was terrifying, and his falling mountain palms and berserk beast halberd technique were also perfected. Today, Qin Wendian once again arrived at the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Qin Wendian bowed to the old man. The old man opened his eyes, as a trace of vigor could be seen flickering in his eyes. "Are you confident? Let's give it a try." Qin Wendian replied. The old man nodded his head, and closed his eyes once again. Qin Wendian walked past him, and once again arrived at the unbroken door. What secrets did this so-called 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion contain? Crashing sounds echoed out as the divine energy in Qin Wendian's body boiled. Taking a step forward, he lifted his palms and blasted out a palm imprint the size of a mountain. With a deafening boom, the door trembled, causing the heart of the old man to tremble as well. Qin Wendian retreated a step, and the divine energy in his body continued to surge. He struck out once again, as both the falling mountain palms and the Kuji imprint simultaneously landed on the door. Boom! The terrifying rumbling sounds caused the entire Heavenly Star Pavilion to tremble. Many people inclined their heads and stared at the top of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Who was that? An ancient halberd appeared in Qin Wendian's hands. Even if a cultivator at the arterial circulation realm were to use a high-grade divine weapon, there would still be a limit to its effectiveness. Hence, the old man didn't restrict him from using divine weapons to attack. In that instant, Qin Wendian's blood began to boil. His entire person was akin to a demon as he took a step forward, and the ancient halberd exploded outwards, as though it was the sovereign of the world. Pooh! A light sound rang out. The eyes of the old man on the stairs abruptly opened, as a terrifying light flickered within. His heart trembled violently. Broken, Qin Wendian had broken open that door. Qin Wendian's heart was filled with excitement as he walked towards the final secret of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Behind this door, there was only a small space. What made Qin Wendian bewildered was that this space wasn't as mystical as the first and second doors. Instead, there was only an ancient scroll. Qin Wendian opened the scroll, as an expression of bewilderment appeared on his face. This should be a map. The final secret of the Heavenly Star Pavilion was actually a map left behind by the Azure Emperor. Qin Wendian had never left Chu before, so he naturally wouldn't be able to understand the meaning of the map. He could only keep the scroll, and as he walked out, the old man appeared in front of him. Senior. Qin Wentian bowed to the old man. From today onwards, the 8th and 9th levels of the Heavenly Star Pavilion will no longer exist. The 7th level will be open to the geniuses of the Emperor Star Academy. Everything that you have obtained here, you are not to speak of it to anyone else. The old man instructed. Understood. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He understood the logic of treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Qin Wentian didn't leave immediately. He stepped into the first door, and headed towards the spirit beast grounds. However, he didn't meet many people, but instead, he met many demonic beasts. Qin Wentian didn't know that at this moment, the Emperor Star Academy was in an uproar. Outside the Emperor Star Academy, a group of elders and students stood together, as though they were welcoming someone. From afar, a group of silhouettes could be seen riding on powerful demonic beasts. Above them, the silhouettes stopped in the airspace above the Emperor Star Academy. Their gazes were sharp as they stared downwards, as though they were unexcelled in the world. If Qin Wentian was here, he would have discovered that he was acquainted with one of the youths. It was none other than Yu Qingfeng, whom he had met in the Spirit Beast grounds. The Emperor Star Academy had also received the news 2 days ago that people from the Azure Emperor Palace would descend. As for the reason, the Emperor Star Academy wasn't clear. Not only the Azure Emperor Palace, there were also many experts descending on Chu today, insufferably arrogant. Xiaolan, who was in the royal palace, had his brows furrowed. He didn't expect that the news would still leak out. Back then, the Azure Emperor had come to Chu several times, hiding his greatest secret there. If this secret were to be exposed, not to mention a small country like Chu, even the entire Grand Xia would be shaken. Chapter 176. In the Spirit Beasts grounds, Qin Wentian had slain many demonic beasts and devoured their spirit beasts. But at this moment, his countenance was incomparably heavy. In front of Qin Wentian, a gigantic demonic beast appeared. This demonic beast's entire body was shrouded in a golden glow and was over 4 meters tall. Its palms were the size of praying mats, and a single slap from it could kill a human. The Golden Primal Ape was ranked number 3 in the War Beast Index, and possessed the Golden Primal Ape constellation from the 5th heavenly layer. Its attack and defense were almost invincible, and what was even more terrifying was that its speed wasn't slow at all. However, at this moment, the Golden Primal Ape wasn't feeling too good. It unceasingly panted heavily. This puny human in front of it was actually able to injure it. The blood in Qin Wentian's body surged, and he was as handsome as a demon. His long black hair fluttered in the wind, and with the ancient halberd in his hands, he resembled a demonic god of war, unexcelled in the world. After breaking through to the 9th level of arterial circulation, he had also cultivated the fiend transformation art. His strength was many times stronger compared to the previous time he entered. Boom! The Golden Primal Ape stomped on the ground, causing cracks to appear on the ground. Its gigantic palms slammed towards Qin Wentian with a force even more violent than a mountain peak. Bzzz. Qin Wentian had the wings of a Garuda on his back, and his speed was as fast as lightning. He didn't retreat, but rather advanced instead. With a howl of rage, he soared into the air as his ancient halberd exploded outwards. Roar! The Golden Primal Ape howled madly. That thunderous roar caused intense pain in Qin Wentian's eardrums as his mind went numb. Qin Wentian also howled in rage as a palm imprint blasted out towards the Golden Primal Ape. However, the ancient halberd collided with the other palm of the Golden Primal Ape as a terrifying sound echoed out. A man and a demonic beast clashed once more, causing the earth to crumble and the surrounding beasts to retreat. The frenzied battle continued for an hour. The Golden Primal Ape was riddled with injuries, and Qin Wentian wasn't in a good state either. His internal organs were all shaken, and this was only because he had been using the advantage of the Garuda movement technique to evade the attacks. Puchi! Finally seizing an opportunity, Qin Wentian's ancient halberd pierced into the eyes of the Golden Primal Ape. A thunderous roar shook the heavens as the golden primal ape went completely berserk. Qin Wendian retreated, and after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the golden primal ape finally couldn't hold on any longer and was exhausted to death by Qin Wendian. Naturally, Qin Wendian didn't hesitate to devour the beast spirit. Qin Wendian was extremely excited as he continued to search for prey in the spirit beast grounds. Finally, he encountered the Crimson Blood Thunder Hawk that was ranked number 5 in the War Beast Index. Qin Wendian pretended to flee and was even injured by the Crimson Blood Thunder Hawk. Only then did he manage to find an extremely rare opportunity to slay this demonic beast. After devouring so many beast spirits, the demonic aura exuding from him grew even more intense, especially when he executed the fiend transformation art. Outside, those from the Emperor Star Academy welcomed the arrival of the experts from the Azure Emperor Palace. However, they didn't know that the purpose of the Azure Emperor Palace wasn't to stroll around, but rather, to understand the entire Emperor Star Academy, and to find out where the Azure Emperor's secret could be hidden. In the air, a white crane flew over. Mo Qingcheng was here today to deliver medicine to Qin Wendian. Although Qin Wendian had already recovered, and looked no different from an ordinary person, his heart was still injured after all. If he could use medicine to treat his injuries, it would be even more perfect. Grandfather. The white crane landed on the ground. Mo Qingcheng couldn't help but have a bewildered expression on her face when she saw old Gu accompanying a group of people. She was naturally clear of the status of her grandfather in the Emperor Star Academy, yet he was actually personally receiving these uninvited guests. Qingcheng, quickly come and pay your respects to the seniors of the Azure Emperor Palace. Old Gu smiled at Mo Qingcheng, reminding her with his words in case Mo Qingcheng said something inappropriate. Azure Emperor Palace. Mo Qingcheng's heart trembled. She had heard of this transcendent power in the outside world. Junior Mo Qingcheng pays her respects to the seniors. Mo Qingcheng bowed to the crowd. Those from the Azure Emperor Palace were all contemplating Mo Qingcheng, especially a few youths. Their gazes were filled with passion as they stared at Mo Qingcheng. Who would have thought that there would actually be such a beauty in the small Chu country? Even in the Azure continent, there shouldn't be many females who could be compared to her. What a beautiful girl, I wonder if she's already married. A middle-aged man from the Azure Emperor Palace smiled. Qingcheng is not 18 yet, I'm not married yet. Old Gu politely replied. Ha, it's about time. Mo Qingcheng, how's your cultivation base? The middle-aged man asked. First level of Yuanfu. Mo Qingcheng was extremely unhappy in her heart, but she still replied. The eyes of the middle-aged man suddenly lit up. Not even 18 years old, yet already at Yuanfu, not to mention her beauty. Not bad indeed. As he thought of this, he cast a glance at Yu Qingfeng who was standing beside him. Yu Qingfeng naturally understood the meaning of his father's words, and when he saw Mo Qingcheng's beauty, his heart was stirred as well. Miss Qingcheng, my name is Yu Qingfeng. Yu Qingfeng smiled, exuding a graceful demeanor. Such a scene caused the hearts of those from the Emperor Star Academy to tremble. Old Gu wanted to grant Mo Qingcheng and Qin Wendian their marriage, but now that Yu Qingfeng had spoken, his intentions were clear. In the Chu country, although there were many outstanding geniuses who were secretly in love with Mo Qingcheng, because of her background, if she wasn't willing, who would dare to mention it? However, Yu Qingfeng was different. He was someone from the Azure Emperor Palace, he naturally wouldn't care about Mo Qingcheng's background. Mo Qingcheng nodded her head to Yu Qingfeng, but she didn't reply. She silently cursed herself for coming at the wrong time. Ha, you juniors should go and have a chat. It's boring to accompany us here. The middle-aged man beside Yu Qingfeng was none other than his father. Yu Qingfeng was naturally more than willing, he stepped forward and smiled at Mo Qingcheng. Miss Qingcheng, let's go for a walk. Mo Qingcheng was naturally unwilling in her heart, hence she didn't reply. Qingcheng. At this moment, a silhouette walked over. Mo Qingcheng turned, a gentle smile appeared on her face as she winked at Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian had already noticed the situation earlier, and when he saw Yu Qingfeng, his heart trembled. He had entered the spirit beast's realm before, and he knew that Yu Qingfeng was someone from the Azure Emperor Palace. And when he saw that Yu Qingfeng seemed to have the intention to woo Mo Qingcheng, this made Qin Wendian feel extremely uncomfortable. This feeling, Qin Wendian had never felt before. Why are you here? Qin Wendian walked to the side of Mo Qingcheng and stretched out his hands, pulling on Mo Qingcheng's dainty hands. Mo Qingcheng's hands trembled as a hint of shyness flashed in her beautiful eyes. However, she knew Qin Wendian's intentions, hence she allowed him to pull on her hands as she gently smiled, "I'm here to deliver the medicine to you." Such a scene was witnessed by the others. Those from the Emperor's Star Academy were all extremely worried. They didn't expect that the relationship between Qin Wendian and Mo Qingcheng would be so close. They didn't know if the people from the Azure Emperor Palace would blame them or not. Yu Qingfeng naturally recognized Qin Wendian as well. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Wendian, quickly come and pay your respects to the seniors from the Azure Emperor Palace." Old Gu spoke to Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian nodded his head. Before bowing to those from the Azure Emperor Palace, Junior Qin Wendian pays his respects to the seniors. The middle-aged man cast a glance at Qin Wendian, as a sharp light flashed in his eyes. "Let's go." He spoke in a low voice, as he led the crowd past Qin Wendian, completely disregarding Qin Wendian. Earlier, he had wanted to matchmake Yu Qingfeng and Mo Qingcheng, but in the blink of an eye, his mood was ruined by a junior. Naturally, he felt that he had lost a lot of face. As for Qin Wendian, he was merely a student from the Emperor's Star Academy. How could he possibly place him in his eyes? "Brother Qin, we meet again." Yu Qingfeng spoke in a low voice as he passed by Qin Wendian. After which, his eyes impolitely swept over Mo Qingcheng, causing Qin Wendian to furrow his brows, as a cold glint of light flickered in his eyes. After the crowd left, Mo Qingcheng rolled her eyes at Qin Wendian. Staring at the hand that was holding hers, she asked, "Are you still not going to let go?" Feeling that soft and delicate little hand, Qin Wendian couldn't bear to let go. He lightly squeezed her hand, causing Mo Qingcheng's face to redden. Only then did Qin Wendian reluctantly release her hand. "Lecherous fellow!" Mo Qingcheng cursed in a low voice, as she walked forward. However, on her countenance that could topple the world, a light smile could be seen. Like a shy young maiden, experiencing the first awakening of love. "I couldn't help myself." Qin Wendian awkwardly smiled, as he scratched his head. The him now was like an ordinary sunny youth. After catching up to Mo Qingcheng, Qin Wendian couldn't help but fall into a daze as he stared at her mischievous countenance. Traces of warmth flowed through his heart. This kind of feeling was something he had never experienced before. It was a wondrous feeling, a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of warmth. The people from the Azure Emperor Palace arrived at a great hall. Yu Qingfeng's father, Yu Hanshan, sat on the main seat, and on both sides of him were people from the Azure Emperor Palace. Those from the Emperor's Star Academy were helpless as well. In fact, they had already had contact with the Azure Emperor Palace before. Back then, the matter of Luo Tianya was also resolved by the Azure Emperor Palace. However, the internal structure of the Azure Emperor Palace was also divided into factions, the direct line of descent of the Azure Emperor and the non-direct line of descent. Now, the direct line of descent of the Azure Emperor Palace was getting weaker and weaker, and their authority to speak in the Azure Emperor Palace was gradually lost. Those who came this time around were all from the non-direct line of descent. Yu Hanshan sat on the main seat, as his sharp gaze swept over the people from the Emperor's Star Academy. From today onwards, the Heavenly Star Pavilion and the Astral River Hall will be temporarily controlled by my Azure Emperor Palace. Qingfeng, you guys go to the Dream Sky Forest to take a look. The countenances of those from the Emperor's Star Academy stiffened. Not long ago, they had just introduced the Azure Emperor Palace to the Azure Emperor Palace. Why? Is there a problem? Yu Hanshan coldly asked upon seeing the frowns on the faces of those from the Emperor's Star Academy. Nope, I just hope that it won't affect the cultivation of the students of the academy. Old Gu sighed in his heart. The Azure Emperor Palace was too powerful, they couldn't afford to offend them. Fine. In addition, you guys bring the people from the Azure Emperor Palace to the other secret locations of the Emperor Star Academy. Yu Hanshan spoke again, and the Emperor Star Academy could only agree. These people seem to be searching for something. Go on. Yu Hanshan waved his hands, and the people from the Emperor Star Academy departed. Very quickly, only Yu Hanshan, Yu Qingfeng, and his son remained. Father, is there a possibility that the secret of the Azure Emperor is hidden here? Yu Qingfeng asked. Yu Hanshan rubbed the center of his brows, as he closed his eyes and replied in a low voice, the Azure Emperor's faction managed to find some notes left behind by the Azure Emperor, revealing that he had visited this place many times before. If we can really find the secret, Qingfeng, your future would be incomparably bright. Yu Qingfeng's heart trembled. Back then, the Azure Emperor was ranked first among the 36 heavenly dippers of Grand Xia. His combat prowess was terrifying, and no matter how talented his opponents were, he was invincible among those of the same level. This was the ironclad rule of cultivation. The Azure Emperor didn't only have a single Yuanfu. For stellar martial cultivators, their arterial pathways would transform into whirlpools, and they would only have a single Yuanfu in their bodies. However, the Azure Emperor had broken this ironclad rule. He had multiple Yuanfu, and every stellar martial cultivator knew what that signified. It signified that he could store astral energy several times more than others, and could nurture astral novas in different Yuanfu. How could his combat prowess not be terrifying? Chapter 177. There were many experts from the royal capital of Chu, but none of them interfered in the matters of the Emperor Star Academy or the royal clan. To them, these were all insignificant matters. The people from the Azure Emperor Palace caused a huge commotion in the Emperor Star Academy. Although they promised the academy that they wouldn't disturb the students, they weren't so polite when they searched the academy. The innate techniques in the Heavenly Star Pavilion were all turned upside down, and they even discovered the entrance to the Spirit Beast's domain on the 7th level. However, the insides of the other two doors had already been destroyed, and only the basic innate techniques were stored within. What made the people from the Emperor Star Academy even angrier was that when those from the Azure Emperor Palace saw some of the more powerful innate techniques, they directly took them away. What was even more outrageous was that they wanted to tear down the Emperor Star Monument. This monument was the symbol of the Emperor Star Academy, and it bore witness to the history of the academy. At this moment, there were many people gathered in front of the Emperor Star Monument. Ren Qianqing, Old Gu, and the rest were all here. Even the old man that Qin Wentian had seen before, who was guarding the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, appeared as well. They stared at the people from the Azure Emperor Palace as they spoke. This monument is the blood and sweat of the Azure Emperor, and records the history of the academy. Everyone, please show some mercy. You should be the current headmaster of the Emperor Star Academy, the descendant of the Azure Emperor, Dai, right? Yu Hanshan stared at the old man, his eyes gleaming with sharpness. Yes. The old man calmly replied, causing many of the people from the Emperor Star Academy to be shocked. This inconspicuous old man was actually the headmaster of the Emperor Star Academy. So it turned out that the position of the headmaster of the Emperor Star Academy had always been inherited by the descendant of the Azure Emperor. They had always been silently protecting the Emperor Star Academy, and as for the inner workings of the Emperor Star Academy, they had no way of knowing. Dai, you should be clear of my purpose in coming here. The Emperor Star Monument must be torn down no matter what. Yu Hanshan's gaze was calm, yet there was an indisputable intent in it. Too ruthless. The surrounding students all had expressions of anger on their faces, yet they didn't dare to say anything. The Azure Emperor Palace and the Emperor Star Academy are of the same lineage, how can they be so overboard? From afar, Mo Qingcheng and Qin Wentian stood together. Mo Qingcheng was frowning, she was extremely angry. The Azure Emperor Palace had gone too far. Miss Qingcheng, it's impossible for the Emperor Star Academy to control the will of the Azure Emperor Palace. The two of them are not on the same level. Yu Qingfeng gazed at Mo Qingcheng as a warm smile appeared on his face. Every time he looked at this young lady, he would feel a different kind of emotion stirring in his heart. Seeing the look in Yu Qingfeng's eyes, Mo Qingcheng clenched her fists tightly. Why don't Mo Qingcheng come with me to the Azure Emperor Palace? It's much better than staying here. Yu Qingfeng joked, yet his words were laced with hints of teasing. You are too presumptuous. Qin Wentian's eyes were filled with rage. However, he only saw Yu Qingfeng's eyes flashing with a cold light as he stared at Qin Wentian. He then laughed coldly, Brother Qin, do you really think that this is the land of spirit beasts? After speaking, his silhouette transformed into a series of afterimages as a terrifying pressure gushed forth towards Qin Wentian. Not only that, this was within the grounds of the Emperor's Star Academy. How arrogant could he be? Naturally, Yu Qingfeng was confident that with his strength, he would be able to suppress Qin Wentian. After all, they had already seen each other's strength in the spirit beast's grounds. Yu Qingfeng blasted out with a palm strike that was incomparably ferocious, containing an indomitable will. Not only that, it contained a terrifying sharpness that could slash apart everything, capable of directly killing people. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened as he blasted out with his falling mountain palms. The two palms collided, causing a deafening sound to ring out. Qin Wentian was forced backwards as he groaned in agony. Fresh blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The gazes of many in the crowd were all filled with shock in their hearts. This Yu Qingfeng was so tyrannical, yet his strength was so strong that he could actually injure Qin Wentian. The members of the Azure Emperor Palace acted as though nothing had happened. The aura that erupted from Qin Wentian was merely at the 8th level of arterial circulation. Given Yu Qingfeng's strength, killing him was as easy as flipping his palms. However, Mo Qingcheng's beautiful eyes flickered as she stared at Qin Wentian. This fellow had become smarter. Mo Qingcheng was very clear that Qin Wentian had already stepped into the 9th level of arterial circulation. That earlier strike was obviously done intentionally, concealing his true strength. If not, Mo Qingcheng didn't believe that Yu Qingfeng would be able to defeat Qin Wentian. Destroy it. At this moment, Yu Hanshan coldly spat out. Those from the Azure Emperor Palace blasted out with their palms, causing thunderous rumbling sounds to echo out as the Emperor's Star Monument shattered into pieces. No. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes turned red as she witnessed the destruction of the Emperor's Star Monuments. She was extremely enraged. The rumbling sounds continued unceasingly as the Emperor's Star Monuments crumbled one by one. The members of the Azure Emperor Palace started to inspect the shattered monuments, yet they didn't discover anything. Miss Qingcheng, if you have time, let's go out for a walk. Before Yu Qingfeng left, he smiled at Mo Qingcheng. Staring at her beautiful countenance, his heart pounded with excitement. Even if she couldn't become his wife, if he could obtain her body, wouldn't that be an extremely exciting matter? As he thought of this, the blood in Yu Qingfeng's heart surged. Casting a glance at Mo Qingcheng, a meaningful smile appeared on his face as he turned and departed. Mo Qingcheng bit her lips, as though she had suffered an intense humiliation. However, she did her best to endure it. Blood seeped out from the corner of her lips. Luo Huan walked up and squatted down in a daze. The current her was much more haggard than before, and she no longer had the radiance of the past. Those from the Emperor's Star Academy also stood there in silence. They felt wronged and angry, yet they didn't dare to say anything. Qin Wentian clenched his fists as he stared at the departing back of Yu Qingfeng. A terrifying cold light flickered in his eyes, it was a killing intent. Qin Wentian stared at the back of Yu Qingfeng. Stretching out his hands, Qin Wentian grabbed hold of Mo Qingcheng's dainty hands, causing Mo Qingcheng to freeze. She turned her eyes and smiled sweetly at Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian's heart to involuntarily tremble. Let's go. Qin Wentian held onto Mo Qingcheng's hand as they departed. In the spirit beast's grounds, Qin Wendian once again began his slaughter of demonic beasts. Even the demonic beasts ranked within the top 10 couldn't withstand his slaughter. Qin Wendian arrived at the peak of a mountain. He halted his steps as he stared at the peak of the mountain ahead. There was an extremely strange demonic beast there. It had the head of a dragon, the body of a lion, the wings of a great roc, the scales of a xuanwu, the tail of a snake, and the claws of a kirin. Demon Sovereign. Qin Wendian drew in a deep breath. This was the number 1 ranked demonic beast in the War Beast Index. In the War Beast Index, there was only a description of its form, but not its abilities. Qin Wendian could tell with a single glance that this was the Demon Sovereign. The eyes of the Demon Sovereign were incomparably cold, and its entire body shone with a terrifying astral light. Those eyes of his seemed capable of affecting the souls of those who looked at him. With the ancient halberd in his hands, Qin Wendian's silhouette transformed into a shadow as he dashed towards the Demon Sovereign. His purpose in coming to the spirit beast's grounds, other than to temper himself, was naturally to hunt the top-ranked demonic beasts in the War Beast Index. Now that he had encountered the number 1 ranked demonic beast, how could he let it go? The astral light was so dazzling that it pierced the eyes of those who looked at it. A resplendent light abruptly lit up the skies as a roar shook the heavens and earth. Numerous demonic beasts appeared beside the Demon Sovereign, all of them howling in a frenzy. This caused Qin Wendian to halt his steps as he stared in shock at the scene before him. Summoned beasts. The number 1 ranked Demon Sovereign in the War Beast Index is actually a summoned beast. Qin Wendian's heart trembled. This was a beast that he had dreamed of. But as he stared at the demonic beasts, Qin Wendian grew wary again, his countenance solemn. Weng! A raging wind swept past as Qin Wendian seemed to have transformed into a true Kuanpeng. The ancient halberd pierced out in fury, and an azure dragon roared. With a deafening boom, the body of a demonic beast exploded. However, Qin Wendian's body did not pause for even a moment. Executing the vermilion bird stance, the ancient halberd swept out horizontally as the demonic beasts roared. 2 days later, Qin Wendian walked out of the spirit beast's grounds wearily. Shaking his head, he felt extremely uncomfortable. In order to hunt the number 1 ranked Demon Sovereign in the War Beast Index, he had spent a whole 2 days and used all sorts of methods to finally slay the Demon Sovereign and plunder the beast spirit. Such a harvest made Qin Wendian exceptionally excited. Wendian. As Qin Wendian was walking in the Emperor's Star Academy, a voice drifted over. Qin Wendian turned his head, only to see Mo Qingqing walking in his direction. Only then did a smile appear on his cold face. Behind her, Yu Qingfeng followed closely behind. These 2 days, Mo Qingqing had been enduring Yu Qingfeng's harassment. Qin Wendian walked to the side of Mo Qingqing and asked in a low voice, "Has he always been like this?" Mo Qingqing nodded her head, as though she had been wronged. "Let's go out for a walk." Qin Wendian pulled Mo Qingqing along with a smile. Mo Qingqing nodded her head, and the 2 of them sprinted out of the Emperor's Star Academy. Upon seeing how close Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing were, the people in the academy felt some jealousy towards Qin Wendian, but they still silently wished that the 2 of them would have a good future together. Yu Qingfeng narrowed his eyes, as a cold light flickered within. He watched as Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing left. The people from the Azure Emperor Palace were getting more and more overboard, turning the entire Emperor's Star Academy upside down, yet they still couldn't find what they were looking for. Yu Qingfeng, on the other hand, felt somewhat bored. Occasionally, he would accompany a group of youths from the Azure Emperor Palace to take a walk outside the Emperor's Star Academy. But today, there was actually a group of idiots who offended the Azure Emperor Palace, resulting in a conflict between both parties. Not only that, the other party had a Yuanfu realm cultivator among them, suppressing the youths from the Azure Emperor Palace. How could the arrogant youths from the Azure Emperor Palace accept this? They came here to temper themselves, yet in a small place like Chu, there were actually people who dared to antagonize them. They were simply courting death. Those from the Azure Emperor Palace delayed the movements of the other party, allowing Yu Qingfeng to return and call for reinforcements. Yu Qingfeng immediately headed in the direction of the Emperor's Star Academy, but when he passed by a desolate area, a black-robed figure blocked his path of retreat. This black-robed figure had his head lowered, wielding a long spear in his hands as he slowly walked forward. "Who the hell are you?" Yu Qingfeng halted his steps as he coldly asked. He didn't expect that there would actually be someone who wanted to kill him in broad daylight. Yu Qingfeng wasn't a fool. He could faintly sense that someone was intentionally targeting him. If not, how could there be such a coincidence? "The person who wants your life." A cold voice rang out. The black-robed man transformed into a blur as a beam of light shot out from his spear. A terrifying demonic chi gushed forth as the spear vibrated, transforming into a terrifying vortex that contained boundless energy. Yu Qingfeng inclined his head, staring at the incoming figure. Upon seeing the owner of the pair of eyes, his heart violently pounded. "It's you." Yu Qingfeng lifted his palms to attack. An indomitable palm imprint collided with the long spear, causing a piercing sound to echo out. After which, a scream of agony could be heard. The long spear directly pierced through his palms, before penetrating through his throat, nailing Yu Qingfeng to the ground. 9th level of arterial circulation. Yu Qingfeng's eyes were wide open, as he died with a grievance. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that he would die in a small country like Chu. Chapter 178. In the Emperor's Star Academy, Yu Qingfeng's corpse lay quietly on the ground. A long spear had pierced through his throat, nailing him to death. In front of the corpse, Yu Hanshan's body trembled. He didn't dare to believe, nor was he willing to believe, that his son, Yu Qingfeng, would be killed by someone during this trip to Chu. His eyes were bloodshot, as a towering killing intent gushed forth from him. The students of the Emperor's Star Academy all retreated far away, rejoicing in their hearts at Yu Qingfeng's misfortune. During this period of time, those from the Azure Emperor Palace had been too arrogant, destroying everything in the Emperor's Star Academy. Now, they finally received their punishment. This Yu Qingfeng must have been too arrogant, which led to the enmity between him and the Azure Emperor Palace, resulting in his death. Investigate thoroughly. Yu Hanshan howled in rage, his voice reverberating throughout the entire Emperor's Star Academy. Qin Wentian sat in his own courtyard, with a map in his hands, as though nothing had happened. Upon hearing Yu Qingfeng's howl, he inclined his head and cast a glance at the horizon, his countenance calm. If he didn't kill Yu Qingfeng, Mo Qingqing wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Hence, he had to die. The heart of that immature youth, under such a cruel environment, had gradually turned cold. As long as someone threatened the people around him, he would rather become a cold-blooded god of slaughter. Lowering his head to look at the map in his hands, Qin Wentian's finger landed on a certain location. There were words written on it. "This is the demon continent of the 9 continents." The location marked on the map should be located in a vast forested mountain range outside the demon continent. Qin Wentian stared at the terrain. The land of the 9 continents was boundlessly vast. Sometimes, a forest or a mountain range was even larger than an entire country. For example, the dark forest of Chu, it encompassed the entire royal capital, making it impossible for anyone to find out what secrets were hidden within. The forested mountain range marked on the map occupied an extremely large area. Qin Wentian stared at the location marked on the map. That location was within the forested mountain range, within a certain small city. Qin Wentian didn't know what secrets the Azure Emperor had left behind in the 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. "Wentian." At this moment, a voice drifted over. Qin Wentian inclined his head, only to see Old Gu and Mo Qingqing descending from the air. "Old Gu, Qingqing." Qin Wentian kept the map and stood up. "Yu Qingfeng is dead." Old Gu glanced at Qin Wentian, only to see that Qin Wentian's countenance was as calm as ever. Old Gu instantly understood what was going on, and immediately changed the topic. I've already found out the reason why the Azure Emperor Palace came to the Emperor's Star Academy. Why did you come? Qin Wentian saw that Old Gu didn't continue talking about Yu Qingfeng's death. The three of them had a tacit understanding that the Emperor's Star Academy naturally wouldn't investigate too seriously. With regards to the arrival of the Azure Emperor Palace, Qin Wentian was extremely curious. There are two major factions within the Azure Emperor Palace. One of them is the direct line of descent of the Azure Emperor. Sect leader Dai is the representative of this line of descent in the Emperor's Star Academy, and has countless connections with the Emperor's Star Academy. The other faction consists of the people who came here today. We received news from the Azure faction that the Azure Emperor hid the greatest secret of his life in the Emperor's Star Academy. Xiao Lan from the Nine Mystical Palace came here because of this. The secret of the Azure Emperor? Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened. Yes, the secret of the Azure Emperor. Back then, no matter what cultivation level the Azure Emperor was at, no matter what kind of experts he faced, he would always be invincible. This was all because of his unique cultivation method. The Azure Emperor had cultivated multiple palaces, and after this secret was exposed, countless experts in the Grand Xia Empire started to pursue the Azure Emperor. Before the Azure Emperor disappeared, he might have made a trip to the Emperor's Star Academy that he founded. Multiple palaces? Qin Wentian's heart trembled. For stellar martial cultivators, they could only form a single Yuan Fu Si. This was something he was very clear about. After that, the astral novas would also be nurtured from the Yuan Fu. Yes, it might be a heaven-defying cultivation art, but nobody knows where it is. Old Gu continued, yet Qin Wentian's heart involuntarily trembled. Map, the map of the 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. If it was that map, then Dai, who was the guardian of the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, should be able to vaguely guess where it was located, right? For thousands of years, no one had managed to break through the 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Could it be that this was the death order of the Azure Emperor? However, you don't have to bother about this matter, it has nothing to do with you. I'm here to tell you that Qingqing wants to go out for a walk. Why don't you accompany her to relax? Old Gu spoke to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian cast a glance at Old Gu and Mo Qingqing. Upon seeing their gazes, how could he not understand Old Gu's intentions? Those from the Azure Emperor Palace thought that he was only at the 8th level of arterial circulation. Not only that, he was injured by Yu Qingfeng in a single strike. Naturally, they wouldn't suspect him. However, Old Gu and Mo Qingqing faintly knew that he had the ability to kill Yu Qingfeng. They should have already guessed it, and thus, they hoped that he would leave this place. If not, his strength would be exposed in the future. Not only that, when Old Gu spoke of leaving, he was most probably referring to leaving Chu temporarily. Currently, the Emperor's Star Academy was in a state of conflict with the royal clan, and the Azure Emperor Palace was also here. This was a period of trouble, and the Emperor's Star Academy wanted him to stay far away from them. This way, he, Qin Wentian, wouldn't be in danger. Old Gu's intentions could be said to be extremely meticulous. After a moment of silence, Qin Wentian heavily nodded his head, okay. Make your preparations, we'll set off immediately. Old Gu patted Qin Wentian on his shoulders, before departing the area. I'll go inform my father and my sister. Qin Wentian stared at Mo Qingqing. I'll wait for you. Mo Qingqing nodded her head. Qin Wentian separately informed Qin Chuan, Qin Yao, as well as Fan Lu, that if they wished to leave, they must remember to use the protection of the Emperor's Star Academy. After instructing everything, Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing left in a low-profile manner. They first exited the Emperor's Star Academy, before riding on a white crane and soaring through the skies. The white crane flew westwards, and Qin Wentian stood atop it, gazing at the royal capital that was getting further and further away. His eyes were filled with reluctance to part. The reason why Qin Wentian agreed to Old Gu's suggestion was because he was very clear of the current situation. He didn't even have the qualifications to participate in the conflict. Hence, he chose to temporarily leave. Very soon, I'll be back. Qin Wendian silently vowed in his heart. In this royal capital, there were many people he couldn't bear to part with. He truly couldn't bear to leave, but he had to improve himself. What are you thinking about? Mo Qingcheng walked to the side of Qin Wendian as she asked in a low voice. Qingcheng, after you send me out, let's go back. I might need to go to a place very far away. Qin Wendian turned his head, looking at Mo Qingcheng as a warm smile appeared on his face. Didn't you say that you would accompany me to relax? Mo Qingcheng rebuked as she stared at Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian bitterly smiled, placing both his hands on Mo Qingcheng's shoulders as he seriously stated, I really need to go to a very far place, and there's a possibility that I might encounter danger. There's no need for you to accompany me on this dangerous journey. Mo Qingcheng stared at Qin Wendian, not saying a word. Her beautiful countenance was just inches away from his, and her watery eyes were filled with a hint of bitterness, causing a warm current to flow through Qin Wendian's heart. Stretching out his hand, he moved it towards Mo Qingcheng's face. Qin Wendian's heart pounded rapidly, he was even more nervous than when he was in combat. Finally, Qin Wendian's palm landed on Mo Qingcheng's face. Her soft and crystalline skin caused Qin Wendian's heartbeat to quicken even more. He seriously stared at Mo Qingcheng's face, as though he was afraid that Mo Qingcheng would be angry. I'll accompany you. Mo Qingcheng continued to stare at him, as she spat out these 4 words. Qin Wendian bitterly smiled, but seeing the bitterness and determination in her eyes, he could only nod his head. That's more like it. Mo Qingcheng smiled sweetly, causing Qin Wendian's heartbeat to quicken even more. This was the first time he saw her smile at such a close distance. It was too beautiful, too breathtaking. I haven't taken enough advantage of you. Mo Qingcheng's lips twitched as she glared at Qin Wendian. Only then did Qin Wendian retract his trembling hands, as he sat on the back of the white crane. However, he still felt a sweetness in his heart. Only when he was together with Mo Qingcheng would he feel this kind of warmth and sweetness. Mo Qingcheng sat beside Qin Wendian. The speed of the white crane was extremely fast, as a strong gust of wind buffeted their bodies. The devilishly handsome young man and the devastatingly beautiful young lady sat together, shuttling through the clouds, resembling a celestial couple. Where are we going? A gentle smile could be seen on Mo Qingcheng's face as she asked Qin Wendian who was beside her. Qin Wendian took out a map and pointed to the marked location, outside of the demon continent. If we fly according to the route marked on the map, I'm afraid it will take quite some time before we arrive. Where did you get this map from? Mo Qingcheng stared at Qin Wendian in bewilderment. The 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, the map left behind by the Azure Emperor. Your grandfather told us about the secret of the Azure Emperor, and I'm guessing that there's a high possibility that it's located here. Qin Wendian pointed to the marked location. Mo Qingcheng's beautiful eyes froze. The secret of the Azure Emperor, Qin Wendian had actually told her without any reservations. As she thought of this, a sweet feeling flowed in Mo Qingcheng's heart as she smiled and nodded her head. She was truly happy to have such trust in him. The gust of wind buffeted the map, and after determining the direction, Qin Wendian kept it. The white crane flew westwards, passing by the towns and villages below, as well as the mountains and forests, heading towards a faraway place. This was the first time Qin Wendian had gone to such a faraway place, and it was also the first time Mo Qingcheng had gone on a long journey. Before this, she had never left Chu before. In their hearts, there were traces of trepidation, as well as hints of warmth. Because the person they were traveling together with was the other party. In the hearts of the handsome man and the young lady, the seeds of love sprouted for the first time. Chapter 179. A few thousand miles away from the demon continent, there was a boundlessly vast forest that spanned across countless territories. In this boundless territory, there would occasionally be demonic beasts soaring through the air, whistling through the air. Early in the morning, a white crane could be seen floating in the air. On the back of the white crane, a handsome young man and a beautiful young lady could be seen sitting on it. The young lady's head was resting on the shoulders of the handsome young man, as she gently leaned against him. The handsome young man's eyes were wide open, but he didn't move an inch, as though he was afraid that he would disturb the young lady. These two people were naturally Qin Wentian and Mo Qingcheng. Mo Qingcheng's eyelashes fluttered, as she slowly opened her eyes. Her crystal-like eyes flickered as she moved her head away, a faint blush could be seen on her cheeks. "You're awake." Qin Wentian stared at the haggard countenance of Mo Qingcheng, as traces of heartache could be seen in his heart. On their way here, they had taken many detours, asked many people, and spent over 20 days. Although the speed of the white crane was much faster compared to them, it was still a 7th-level demonic beast after all. Its speed was still limited. Mo Qingcheng lightly nodded her head, as she stared ahead. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light. The boundless forest was so vast that they couldn't see the end of it. If the dark forest was placed here, it would only be a corner. Qin Wentian took out the map, and after looking at the marked location, he passed it to Mo Qingcheng. "We're almost there, help me control the direction of the white crane." "Right." Mo Qingcheng lightly nodded her head, as the white crane continued advancing. In this vast territory, they actually flew for half a day, yet they still hadn't found the marked location. "But the direction is wrong." Mo Qingcheng frowned. In such a vast territory, it was possible that the direction was wrong. "There's someone there." Qin Wentian's gaze shifted to the horizon, only to see a few demonic beasts soaring through the air. Those people also saw the white crane, and as they neared, their eyes brightened when they saw the two of them. The handsome young man and the breathtaking young lady caused them to involuntarily cast a few more glances at them. "Sir, are you going to Demon Mountain City?" the other party asked the two of them. "There really is a Demon Mountain City." Qin Wentian glanced at the map. The place marked on the map was in the Demon Mountain City. "Yes, how far is it?" Qin Wentian asked. "We're almost there." One of the young men glanced at Mo Qingcheng from time to time. Humans love to be beautiful, and with Mo Qingcheng's beauty, she completely outshone his companions. "It's more important to hurry." The maiden beside Mo Qingcheng was frowning, appearing somewhat unhappy. She was clad in a blue dress, exuding a sense of elegance. She was originally also extremely beautiful, but when compared to Mo Qingcheng, her beauty naturally paled in comparison. She was naturally unhappy when she saw the gazes of those around her staring at Mo Qingcheng. "All right." The young men seemed to be more obedient to her. The demonic beasts and the white cranes flew away, but the young men's eyes were still filled with nostalgia. Qin Wentian had a bitter smile on his face as he glanced at Mo Qingcheng. As the saying goes, femme fatale. If a girl was too beautiful, it would naturally attract the attention of others. He didn't know if bringing Mo Qingcheng along was the right decision. "Are you unhappy?" Mo Qingcheng noticed the expression on Qin Wentian's face as she asked in a low voice. "I don't like them looking at you all the time." Qin Wentian smiled and shrugged his shoulders. "But I'm afraid I'll have to get used to the fact that my eyes are on someone else's body." "You're jealous." Mo Qingcheng's beautiful eyes flickered. Qin Wentian didn't say anything, which could be considered as a tacit agreement. This caused Mo Qingcheng to feel a sweetness in her heart. "Did you bring any clothes with you?" Mo Qingcheng asked Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian nodded. "Let me take a look at your clothes." Mo Qingcheng smiled. Qin Wentian didn't understand, but he still took out a few sets of clothes. Under his dumbstruck gaze, Mo Qingcheng draped his clothes over her body, covering her exquisite figure. She even tied her long hair together and wrapped a piece of cloth around her forehead. Her appearance was somewhat out of place, but she still exuded a sense of masculinity. "How about this?" Mo Qingcheng waved her hands. Qin Wentian contemplated Mo Qingcheng. Although she exuded a sense of masculinity, her sparkling skin and flawless countenance couldn't be concealed. However, this nondescript appearance wasn't as breathtaking as earlier, and wouldn't attract as much attention. Humans would always love to be beautiful. Mo Qingqing dressing herself up like this caused Qin Wendian to feel touched in his heart. He stretched out his hands and held on to Mo Qingqing's dainty hands. Mo Qingqing and Qin Wendian finally saw the Demon Mountain city marked on the map. When the white crane landed in the airspace above the city, Mo Qingqing's mouth was agape, as an expression of shock could be seen on her face. The entire city was surrounded by towering mountain ranges. They passed through the gaps between the mountain peaks and stared downwards at the city below, only to see pieces of ancient boulders piled up into the city, exuding a majestic aura. Naturally, this city didn't seem that big from the air, but that was only because the surrounding mountain ranges were too vast. This city wasn't any smaller than the Chu country's royal capital, and there were many people living in it. It was hard to imagine that in the depths of a vast mountain range, there would actually be a city like this. Let's descend. Qin Wendian spoke in a low voice as the white crane landed in the Demon Mountain city. Other than humans, there were also many demonic beasts roaming about. These demonic beasts weren't under the control of Wu Xiu, but rather, they roamed about freely. Humans and demonic beasts actually coexisted peacefully here. One couldn't help but say that this was a strange city, no wonder it was named the Demon Mountain City. Qin Wendian took out the map again. The location marked on the map was in the center of the city, where a majestic palace could be seen. The secret of the Azure Emperor isn't in the Emperor's Star Academy, he only hid a map there. If there really is a heaven-defying cultivation art that can allow one to obtain multiple palaces, what would await me in the future? Qin Wendian murmured in his heart, as he and Mo Qingqing took a stroll in the Demon Mountain city. At this moment, the earth trembled as a demonic beast galloped madly through the streets. The crowd hurriedly gave way to it. Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing turned around, only to see a berserk eagle-eyed lion rushing towards them. Its immense strength trampled the ground, and on the back of the eagle-eyed lion, a young man roared in rage, "Scram!" Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing retreated to the side as the eagle-eyed lion rushed over. The eyes of the young man on the back of the eagle-eyed lion were as sharp as an eagle's. He swept his gaze over to Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing, and upon seeing Mo Qingqing's delicate features, he involuntarily opened his mouth and spat out flames. The intense flames gushed towards Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing, causing the two of them to retreat with furrowed brows. A devilish smile appeared on the face of the young man as he glanced at Mo Qingqing. If it's a girl, I'm afraid that her looks wouldn't lose out to those from the Celestial Lake Palace. After which, he laughed uproariously as he departed. The surrounding crowd, upon hearing the roar of the young man, started to size up Mo Qingqing. Indeed, although she was dressed as a man, her delicate features couldn't be concealed. Qin Wendian furrowed his brows, only to see Mo Qingqing pulling on his hand. Let's continue on our way. Mo Qingqing knew that it was best to keep a low profile when they were outside. The experts here were as common as the clouds, unlike the small Chu country. It was best to be more cautious. I've wronged you. Qin Wendian sighed. He could only blame himself for not having enough strength. If not, how could Mo Qingqing have suffered such grievances? In that case, you better hurry up and become stronger. Mo Qingqing didn't mind it as she laughed. The two of them continued on their way, and when they arrived at the location indicated on the map, they saw a vast palace in front of them. On the outermost gate, there were 3 gigantic words engraved on it, Celestial Lake Palace. This was the Celestial Lake Palace that the arrogant young man on the back of the demonic beast had spoken of. This was the location indicated on the map by the Azure Emperor. A cry of surprise rang out, as several people turned their gazes in the direction of Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing. These people were none other than the young man and woman they had met in the air earlier. Seems like fate has brought us together. You guys also wish to go to the Celestial Lake Palace? The young man smiled at Qin Wendian as he saw Mo Qingqing's disguise. What kind of place is the Celestial Lake Palace? Qin Wendian curiously asked. He really wanted to know the purpose of the Celestial Lake Palace marked on the map by the Azure Emperor. The Celestial Lake Palace is the symbol of the Demon Mountain City. 3,000 years ago, the Demon Mountain City was established by the demonic fairy Qingmei. After 3,000 years of development, the Demon Mountain City gradually developed into a city. In the past, the Demon Mountain City was merely a place where demonic beasts roamed freely. Now, as you can see, it's extremely lively. Not only that, the Celestial Lake Palace also has many beautiful fairies. That young man laughed as he continued, naturally, compared to her, even the fairies of the Celestial Lake Palace are inferior. As he spoke, he cast a glance at Imo Qingcheng, but his gaze was very vague. 3,000 years ago. Qin Wendian murmured. In that case, she should be someone from the same era as the Azure Emperor. Could it be that Qingmei was a demon that had taken human form? Does the Celestial Lake Palace only accept females? If that's the case, why are there so many people here? Qin Wendian curiously asked. Yes, Fairy Qingmei only accepts females, and all of them must be beautiful. As for why she doesn't accept males, let's start from the rumors of the Azure Emperor. Back then, the Azure Emperor was ranked number 1 among the 36 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. What kind of heavens chosen was he? Countless females admired him, but he had a love affair with Fairy Qingmei of the Demon Continent. However, for some unknown reason, the Azure Emperor abandoned Fairy Qingmei, causing her love to turn into hatred. There were even rumors saying that she pursued the Azure Emperor to kill him. Only after the news of the Azure Emperor's death did Fairy Qingmei begin to live in seclusion in the Demon Mountain City. The young man seemed to be very interested, as he spoke with fervor and assurance. It was as though he wanted to show off. Your humble servant is Yi Xiang of the Demon Continent. How may I address you too? Qin Wendian, this is my girlfriend. Qin Wendian replied in a low voice. It wouldn't be good for him to brush off the other party's feelings, but his mind started to race. If Fairy Qingmei really had a relationship with the Azure Emperor, this meant that he hadn't found the wrong place. The location marked on the Azure Emperor's map should be this place. Chapter 180. When Imo Qingcheng heard Qin Wendian say the words girlfriend, a hint of shyness could be seen in her eyes. Her lips curled into a sweet smile. Evidently, in her heart, she had already acknowledged this relationship. However, Imo Qingcheng had a strange feeling. She already had someone she liked. If it was a year ago, she wouldn't even dare to think about it. Yi Xiang, on the other hand, felt a tinge of disappointment in his heart. The reason why he wanted to get close to Qin Wendian was naturally because he had seen Imo Qingcheng's countenance. I see. Yi Xiang smiled as he nodded his head. Yet in his heart, he was cursing Qin Wendian for being so lucky. What kind of background did he have? Thinking of this, Yi Xiang probed further. As for why we're here, Brother Qin, don't you know? Which city is Brother Qin from in the 9-state city? Indeed, I don't know. I'm not from the 9 continents. Qin Wendian didn't explain too clearly. The reason why the Celestial Lake Palace is called the Celestial Lake Palace is because it has a natural celestial lake. It's extremely beneficial to cultivators, especially those below the Heavenly Dipper realm. Back then, when Fairy Qingmei discovered it, it caused quite a commotion. Many transcendent powers wanted to take it for themselves, but what kind of character was the Azure Emperor back then? All the transcendent powers had to give in to him, and no one dared to compete with Fairy Qingmei. Yi Xiang explained, after the news of the Azure Emperor's death spread out, Fairy Qingmei decided to seclude herself here. Many transcendent powers voiced their objections, not wanting Fairy Qingmei to monopolize the Celestial Lake. However, Fairy Qingmei said that all the talented youths in the 9 continents could come here at any time to take the test, and those who passed the test would be able to cultivate in the Celestial Lake. Only then did the transcendent powers give up. After all, no one was willing to offend Fairy Qingmei. Qin Wentian understood. Demonic beasts were different from humans. The majority of demonic beasts cultivated very slowly, but their lifespans were much longer compared to humans. Demonic beasts that could transform into human form were all at the Heavenly Dipper realm. As long as they weren't killed by humans, it wouldn't be a problem for them to live for 5,000 to 6,000 years. Naturally, those transcendent powers wouldn't dare to offend Fairy Qingmei. In other words, everyone here wants to use the celestial pond to cultivate? Qin Wentian glanced at the people around him. Indeed, most of them were young people between the ages of 16 to 25. Moreover, all of them had extraordinary temperament. Presumably, they would not dare to come here without some strength. Just as Qin Wentian was sizing up his surroundings, a pair of eyes shot towards him from afar. Immediately after, a devilish smile appeared on the face of that person. It was the arrogant person who had been riding on the eagle-eyed lion. Yi Xiang followed the direction of Qin Wentian's gaze, and upon seeing that person, his countenance changed. He then stated in a low voice, "He's from the transcendent power of the demon continent, the Beast King Hall." Half-beastman? Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. Yi Xiang walked to Qin Wentian's side as he explained in a light voice, "The Lord of the Beast King Hall is a lion king at the Heavenly Dipper realm. The Beast King is extremely lecherous and has married many human females, giving birth to many half-beastmen. Their descendants are all half-beastmen, and this Shiki is also a descendant of the Beast King." "Little brat, what are you mumbling about?" Shiki coldly stated, his words causing Yi Xiang's countenance to change. Smiling, he replied, "Just chatting casually." "Is that so?" Shiki glanced at the young lady behind Yi Xiang as his tongue twitched, flickering with a greedy light. This caused the countenance of the young lady to be filled with rage. The descendants of the Beast King were truly licentious and had no sense of shame. Now, they even dared to cause trouble for the Celestial Lake Palace. At this moment, within the Celestial Lake Palace, a few young ladies clad in white walked out with the grace of celestial maidens. Momentarily, the gazes of the crowd shifted over as they stared at the silhouettes with veils covering their faces. It was rumored that the females of the Celestial Lake Palace were all extremely beautiful. Fairy Qingmei wouldn't accept anyone other than beauties, and it seemed like this rumor was true. Not only that, as long as one passed the test, they would have the qualifications to choose a beautiful female from the Celestial Lake Palace to be their Dao companion. Naturally, the prerequisite was that the other party had to agree to it. This caused the hearts of many to pound with excitement. Such a rule had never been broken for thousands of years. Nobody knew why Fairy Qingmei wanted to do this. "Everyone, please enter the Celestial Lake Palace." The white-robed young lady led the way, as the crowd followed behind her. The Celestial Lake Palace was extremely beautiful. Following the long corridor in the middle, they arrived at a place filled with pavilions. These pavilions were located on both sides of the long corridor. Atop the pavilions, there were some who peeked their heads out, casting their gazes downwards. Cold expressions could be seen on the faces of many. These people must be the same as them, here to participate in the test. What a fool's dream. The Celestial Lake would be opened once a month, and each time, only 7 people would have the qualifications to bathe in the Celestial Lake. And during this month, there would be many people who would come to participate in the test. It wouldn't be so easy to pass the test. Qin Wentian contemplated the Celestial Lake Palace, feeling astonished in his heart. The power established by Fairy Qingmei was actually so beautiful, like a dream. At the end of the long corridor, there was a palace that was arranged in a picturesque manner. There was a flight of stairs leading up to it, and at the very top, there seemed to be a celestial palace erected there. Is Fairy Qingmei still here? Qin Wentian mused. He had already ascertained that this was the location marked by the Azure Emperor, but now, he had no idea what he should do next. Did Fairy Qingmei know of the secret of the Azure Emperor? From what Yi Xiang had said, it was rumored that the Azure Emperor had abandoned Fairy Qingmei. However, Qin Wentian didn't believe it. There must be more to it than meets the eye. If not, why would the Azure Emperor leave behind the map on the 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, and even order the sect leader of the Emperor Star Academy to protect it? Qin Wendian even had a bold conjecture that the greatest secret of the Azure Emperor wasn't kept in the Azure Emperor Palace. Instead, it was guarded by Fairy Qingmei. Naturally, this was because Qin Wendian had obtained the map from the Emperor Star Academy. Back then, when those old freaks saw the battle between the Azure Emperor and Fairy Qingmei, they definitely wouldn't have thought this way. Shiki, you half-human half-demonic fellow, how dare you come here? Are you not afraid that I, your father, will make you unable to become a human or a demon? A clear voice drifted over, causing Yi Xiang's heart to skip a beat. He didn't know who was so arrogant, daring to humiliate Shiki of the Beast King Hall. Inclining his head, Yi Xiang saw a young man clad in blue robes. This young man was around 18 years of age, with a squarish face and large eyes. He was currently laughing uproariously at Shiki. Ouyang Guangsheng. Yi Xiang's countenance changed. The cultivation bases of those who came here wouldn't be too high. The youths of the 9 continents would all be at the 3rd level of Yuanfu or below, with the highest cultivation base being at the 9th level of arterial circulation. Borrowing the effects of the celestial pool, they would be able to break through to Yuanfu in one go. Not only that, the Yuanfu pools they opened up would be filled with even more astral energy. This Ouyang Guangsheng was also at the 9th level of arterial circulation. For someone of his age, it wasn't something to be proud of. In the 9 continents, there were many 17-year-old Yuanfu cultivators who had already broken through to Yuanfu. But after all, the concept of cultivation was different. If you wanted to condense an astral soul of a higher grade, you had to first increase your perception and willpower. Hence, for the sake of a smoother path in the future, many people didn't mind delaying the time they condensed an astral soul, causing them to start cultivating very late. Ouyang Guangsheng was one such example. He didn't care about the opinions of others. If he didn't start cultivating after the age of 16, many in the Ouyang aristocrat clan would look down on him. Yet Ouyang Guangsheng shocked the entire Ouyang aristocrat clan by condensing an astral soul from the 4th heavenly layer in one go. This caused the Ouyang aristocrat clan to tremble, as they sighed in admiration at Ouyang Guangsheng's tenacity. He was definitely a character worthy of being nurtured. And indeed, in the next 2 years, Ouyang Guangsheng's cultivation soared by leaps and bounds, directly breaking through to the 9th level of arterial circulation. Although he was slower compared to others, the 2 astral souls he condensed were all from the 4th heavenly layer. Hence, his combat prowess was extremely tyrannical, and there were few who could be compared to him at the same level as him. Shiki was also an extremely tyrannical character. If it was any other cultivator at the 9th level of arterial circulation, he would have already started a massacre. But against Ouyang Guangsheng, he didn't have any confidence. Ouyang Guangsheng, remember your words. Shiki coldly spat. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Ouyang Guangsheng laughed uproariously. Beside him, a companion appeared. It was a beautiful young lady, and upon seeing her, Yi Xiang couldn't help but be amazed. She had come as well, and not only that, she came together with Ouyang Guangsheng. It seemed like this trip to the Celestial Lake Palace would be filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It was said that Yao Sheng from the Sky Demons sect had also arrived in advance. Yao Sheng was also an extremely difficult character to deal with. Thinking of this, Yi Xiang gradually lost his confidence, as he felt extremely depressed. Below the empty pavilions, there is an empty signboard. Everyone, please choose your lodgings first. There's still a few more days before we have the opportunity to visit the Celestial Lake, someone from the Celestial Lake Palace stated to the crowd. Momentarily, the crowd dispersed, choosing their own lodgings. Let's stay here, Qin Wendian said to Mo Qingcheng, noticing that the lodgings beside them had an empty signboard hanging above them. I'll listen to you. Mo Qingcheng nodded her head. After which, the two of them removed the empty signboard and entered the lodgings. Below the lodgings was a living room, while upstairs were 2 bedrooms. Walking to the balcony outside the bedrooms, Qin Wentian saw Yi Xiang and the rest entering the lodgings opposite, while Ouyang Guangxing stood beside them. "Little brat, where did you come from?" Ouyang Guangxing's gaze drifted over, and upon seeing Qin Wentian, he couldn't help but ask. Qin Wentian was 17 years of age, with a handsome countenance. His eyes were deep and reserved, and his entire person exuded a demonic aura, giving Ouyang Guangxing a feeling that he was extraordinary. "I came from a very small country, you probably haven't heard of it before." Qin Wentian laughed. "What about you?" Ouyang Guangxing froze for a moment, before breaking into a grin. Yi Xiang introduced, "Brother Qin, this is Ouyang Guangxing, an outstanding young man from the Ouyang aristocrat clan of the Azure continent." Yi Xiang nodded his head towards Ouyang Guangxing, expressing his goodwill. However, Qin Wentian had no idea what the Ouyang aristocrat clan was, nor did he know who Ouyang Guangxing was. "The Azure continent, the Azure Emperor Palace is also located there, right?" Qin Wentian murmured. Upon hearing his words, Ouyang Guangxing froze for a moment before laughing uproariously. What an interesting fellow. Although the Azure Emperor Palace was incomparably glorious in the past, it had gradually declined. How could it be mentioned in the same breath as the Ouyang aristocrat clan? Yi Xiang was speechless. Could it be that in Qin Wentian's eyes, the Ouyang aristocrat clan wasn't as important as the Azure Emperor Palace? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.